Testing. Testing.
right. Are we recording? Okay. Good evening. I'm going to call to order our committee of the whole meeting for the West Jordan City Council. Today is Wednesday, February 15th, 2023. All members of the council are here with the exception of Councilmember Worthen. We're also joined by council office staff, the mayor, and various members of staff, and a few folks in the audience as well. So we have a number of items on the agenda this evening, and council, I would ask for a little bit of flexibility with the agenda. There's a couple items that'll probably take some time and a few that I think we might be able to adjust to expedite things a little bit more quickly. So just kind of a heads up, there might be a little. Yes,
I just wanted to
that's
make
not
sure
one.
I'm
Sorry
not
about that.
speeding,
Nope, you're good. So first item on tonight's agenda, jump back over here. Agenda structure for various meetings held by City Council and meeting expectations. So this is a quick one for the City Council. Vice Chair Bloom and I were trying to get a little bit better feel for what the council's hoping to see with some of these meetings. We had end of last year a conversation that ended with a 4-2 vote in favor of adding a separate work session meeting for the off Wednesday once a month. But as we've been talking with various council members, it seems like everybody has a little bit different ideas to how that meeting should be used. I know the first regular council meeting we had after that, I got a little bit of pushback because we had the regular council meeting and it looked like the agenda was light. So I added some work session items after so that we could take advantage of some of the time. But the comment, one of the comments that was heard was that, time out, I thought the change, we were only having work session items on the off nights. The following regular council meeting, we had just the regular council meeting, and the feedback we got was, time out, why aren't we using all of that meeting time? We could have something else there. So I wanted to get a feel from the council what your thoughts are, what your expectations are. I'll leave it with that. I would like to try and keep this one relatively quick. If we could keep it to 10 minutes or so. If we need more conversation on it, we'll come back a little bit later. I'm looking primarily for, if we have a regular council meeting and it looks like it's going to be short, are you okay having additional items like work session items or RDA or other items added after? Do you want to see kind of an anticipated end time, such as we used to have in council rules that the meetings that were to adjourn at 9 p.m. Do we want that sooner than that? Just something to kind of give us a frame of mind or a reference point so that when we're putting together the agenda, we can say, oh, well, we think we can get one or two items. The other thing that I heard from Councilmember Worthen, who's not here this evening, is her anticipation was that we would continue as we had with the work session followed by the regular council meeting on those regular Wednesdays. And then the other meetings were just kind of as needed. So like I said, everybody, I know we all agreed, or not all agreed, but the majority agreed that we'd want to add that extra meeting night. My question is, how would you like us to execute on that? So happy to hear thoughts.
I think our mics need to be fixed.
Oh, are they in the priority thing?
All right, thank you. My thought process was the two work sessions would help make our council meetings shorter and more effective because we were running into issues where we weren't having enough dialogue. All right. Because we weren't having enough dialogue with all of the stuff we had, and it wasn't making our council meetings efficient, and then we'd have council meetings that went into, 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. So for the city our size, having that extra work session was a huge relief for us to get everything done in the time frame that we needed to get done and become more efficient. So that was my thought process on how I interpreted it. So I'm excited to hear what everybody else thinks, and then we can go from there.
I believe that, well, I'm going to start with the purpose of a work session is to do work, collaborate with staff so that when it gets to the business meeting, we're not having some of the dialogues that we've had in the past with this council where we're wordsmithing and where we're like, no, why would you bring that to us? We hate it. So for me, a work meeting is a collaboration. I guess I kind of thought, in my mind, and I can't remember, Chris, who you said this was now. I think you said Melissa. But I thought we're going to keep the work meeting at the very beginning, do a regular meeting, and just add an additional work meeting. For me, the most important thing is that we have good dialogue on these important things so that we have time to give good feedback to staff so that when we have our attorneys expending time, that they're not expending time just to have to redo it for all of our staff. And that has occurred a lot, I believe, is that because we don't give them good input up front, then they end up doing a bunch of work and then it comes back to us and they have to try again because we're like, no, that's not what we meant. That's not what we want. So I definitely feel we need the work meeting, and that's not a surprise to anybody unless maybe you because you weren't here. But everybody knows that's how I feel. As far as do we need to have it before or after, or do we have it? I thought it was a good use of our time that we were going to be done like within 30 minutes for our business meeting. And it's hard to know, right? When you're the chair, it's hard to know how long your fellow council members or staff or the public are going to speak. So I'm comfortable allowing the chair to say, oh my gosh, we have all this work to do at the end of a meeting. But I think if we do that, we should agree on a time that we end, a time certain. Like our regular meeting starts at 6. And if the business part meeting, if we're done with that by 7:30, that we agree that we'll be here no later than X, and I would throw out 9 o'clock, but I'm comfortable entertaining whatever the body wants. But I think it's more important that we agree on how we're handling it. And for the public, like I don't think we can either do it before or after. I think it has to be a set thing so that we are all aware. But I appreciate you adding the work, and there's just a lot of it. And I want to see our city do a good job, not a quick job. So however we need to accomplish that, I'm good.
So here's my thoughts. One, the business meeting is a business meeting. Let's get in and get it done and just get the work done. The going back and forth on what we want in the policy, the wordsmithing, all that stuff has to happen in a work session. I think, and then what it does is it makes efficiencies for the council that when we get to a business meeting, we've worked through all of those issues, and then we can vote on them. We can hold the public hearings. We can vote on them. Those kind of things. Part of the reason for me, from my perspective of doing the business meeting the way we were doing it, is that if we had all the work done, staff may not even have to be here. You know, on a public, let's say, for example, that we've had a development that's come before us once or twice, whatever. When it comes back to the business meeting, we should have worked all the stuff out. Staff doesn't even need to be here because they've answered all of our questions. Between the applicant and us, we can take care of that. So what I'm trying to do, what I was thinking is, if we go from 6 till 7, 6 to 7, staff may not even have to be here unless they want to be here for the mayor reports or those kind of things. I don't think they have to sit through that meeting. For work sessions, yeah. Okay, that's where we put, that's where the staff are going to be involved more, and that's the work. You heard me last week. We had a short meeting. We haven't had a lot of RDA stuff discussion, so I'm okay using after doing 6 till 7, 6 till 7:30, doing the business meeting, and then if we have RDA, we can talk about it. If there are a couple of things that we see and I'll leave that to the council leadership discretion. If there's a work item that needs to be done, or something needs to be done and you think we can get it done in a half an hour, then let's do it afterwards. And I agree with Councilmember Whitelock. We probably ought to set a time to 8:30. And as we do the agendas, just make sure that we put staff up front, we put the things that the citizens need up front, and just do a good meeting management to get this done. You see how many items are coming before the council now. There's no way we could do that in an hour of a work meeting and business meetings and twice a month. It's not gonna work. I mean, heck, we got 9 items tonight, next meeting's full. We've got it, and if we're gonna do this right, we've gotta take the time to deal with this.
So is the only one that wasn't here for the, on that 4-2 vote, having been out of town when that came up, would have been a 4-3 vote. I appreciate the objectives that you guys have mentioned for having the structure the way we're having it. However, I don't think it's a function of the number of meetings or what night you have them or what time you have them. It's a function of how prepared the council is going into it, how much homework you do in advance, how much questions you ask, how much you spend on the phone with each other. Things like that, I think, are much more effective in moving the needle as far as efficiency goes. I was on the council for 2 years before the idea of a work session ever came up. Chris was there for 6 years before the idea of a work session ever came up. We did the work session at 5:30 for 2 or 3 years before this year, right? And there hasn't been an appreciable change in the speed or efficiency or the number of things that the council does or doesn't do. It's just, meetings are gaseous. As far as the 3 states of matter goes, they're not solid, they're not liquid. They will fill the space you give them. You give them till 9 o'clock, they will fill till 9 o'clock. You give them till midnight, they'll fill till midnight. We can talk forever. We're good at that. So it's not a function of how many meetings we have, what nights we have them. That's not what makes us an efficient or inefficient council. It's the work we put into it between the meetings that's gonna make a difference. And it's not, I haven't seen an appreciable difference over the course of the last 7 years and change now that I've been doing this, that says, wow, look at all this extra time we're now in meetings, and now extra days we're in meetings, and gosh, aren't we doing things better? We're not. It's not better. It's just the same. It's the same. It's just a different same, but it's the same.
Councilmember Pack.
Well, thank you, Chair. I appreciate you bringing up that topic. I know it's a tough situation that you're in. You're trying to go one way, and then the people that don't like that way say to go another way, and then you go that way, and then you get comments to the other side. So I sure appreciate you reaching out to all of us, and I want to respect all opinions on all sides here. Since you're soliciting my input, I look at it from a little bit different angle, maybe, that I'm fine with commingling committee of the whole work session items and official city council items, whether we need to have a longer work session or throw some of the work session items on a council meeting or vice versa, kind of have a 2-part meeting like we've done historically, or now that we're separating them out on different nights, that's fine. Personally, I prefer, let's say, 2 longer meetings than 3 or 4 shorter meetings. Understandably, there's a pain threshold when it gets to midnight and you're wondering, are we making the best decisions possible? And maybe we could look at our closed session items or try to forecast some way to make sure that they're not interminably long. But it seems that if we're meeting, it tends to take the night up anyway. Although I do realize everyone, staff, city council, members of the public, we all have different schedules. Maybe this does allow some people to get home for 8 o'clock bedtimes or 9 o'clock with children. I concur with Councilmember Jacob that my main point that I've always tried to bring up is I just feel personally that our meetings could be more efficient. It's not a disparaging remark against anybody running a meeting or the great presentations we hear from a very prepared staff. I'm more of the opinion, as Councilmember Jacob mentioned, let's put everything online in terms of PowerPoint presentations. If we have follow-up questions, we could ask someone who's in charge of preparing the information. Let's definitely have a public forum discussion, but if it's on the agenda packet, it's accessible to the general public. And then we're here just fine tuning it, answering questions instead of having all the presentations. So I would just like to see more efficiency. And I know my idea of efficiency is a little bit different. Is there value in deliberating in person? Yes. Do we want to do due diligence? I'll meet as many times and as long as we need to. It's just I'm feeling that they could be more efficiently used to respect everyone's time, staff, public, city council. So again, I'm fine commingling, whether it's throwing some items on the agenda that are work session or committee of the whole. I just prefer to have a couple of longer meetings than many shorter meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a couple of thoughts that I have that I'd like to share, but I wanted to start off with this one because I thought it would be relatively quick. I was warned that I was wrong, and I will happily admit that, yep, that was my mistake. Council, if you're okay with that, I'd like to bump this one later on. We can come back to it a little bit later tonight because I know there are folks here that didn't really come to a meeting to hear us talk about having meetings, but I will take ownership for that one. I thought we would knock it out in under 10 minutes. Mistaken. So with that, we'll come back to this one. Next item that we had is the questions for the policy questions on our city survey. And this one will probably be a little bit longer as well. Cassidy, are you okay if we move this towards?
I am happy to do whatever you would like to do, Chair.
Okay. Let's move this one a little bit later in the meeting if everyone else is okay with that. The next item that we had was the introduction of the 2023 draft general plan. Cassidy, are you, I'm seeing three names, Alan, Ray, and Cassidy.
I'll be leading out on this item, yes.
Doing like four people's job at the same time.
I know, that's why I have so many screens open. It's kind of terrifying, but. So tonight, we just wanted to take a moment to introduce the general plan. It was forwarded with a positive recommendation by the Planning Commission with a modification to the future land use map in the Southwest Quadrant, which should be included in your packet is the map that they recommended. Something I wanted to talk about in terms of the general plan is just give you an idea of how you can best review the general plan. My hope, let me share my screen really quick, back to doing 4 jobs at once. My hope is that you can take a month to review and you can discuss in depth on the March 15th Committee of the Whole. And then from there, we hopefully can make the changes you've recommended and adopt on the 22nd of March.
So the reason we had this scheduled as a work session and not just an email to be sent out is we wanted to treat this kind of like the budget. When the budget's completed by the mayor's office, it's handed over to the council. There's just a quick formality of, here you go, this is in your hands now, take some time and look it over. There's not really that much that's expected at the point that it's first given, but we wanted to take a couple minutes to just formally give it to the council and say, here it is, everybody has the attachments. It's also available to the public, so it's not something that's just hidden in council members' emails that not everybody has access to. Are there any questions for Cassidy along with this?
Just a procedural thing.
We'll have to give notice for a public hearing.
We have
Yes.
we have to have a public hearing. So here's the issue that I see. I don't want to hold the public hearing on the night that, on March 22nd, that we're going to adopt it.
Okay.
If citizens show up and citizens make some good comments about the general plan, we're not going to be able to add those to the general plan unless we just say, oh, we need to have some time so that everybody can modify that document and work what we want to put in from the public hearing into the document. So somehow along the line, and so maybe so just follow me through, maybe the better course of this is that we hold, and advertise this well, public hearing on the 8th of March. Let the citizens come in, let the citizens talk about the general plan. Give us their thoughts on the general plan. That can roll up into our discussions on the 15th of March. I mean, and on the public hearing, we just need their input. It's not like we're gonna make, I know I'm doing the right thing when the city attorney's nodding his head yes, so thanks, Paul, appreciate that. But we take that comment, we can assemble that comment, we know what it is, we can bring those comments back to the 15th, incorporate those comments, do what we need to do, and then pass it on the 22nd. Does that make sense?
That's great if that's what the body would like to do.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why the council needs to weigh in on this one before the public does. I think we could do that, have the public hearing on the 8th. Is there anybody that would be in opposition to having the public hearing on the 8th? All right, perfect. Exactly the kind of feedback we're looking for. Anything else you need on this one?
I just want to give a lot of credit to the Planning Commission, to the citizens that helped put this together on the committee, and to Ray and Alan, that they've done a really great job on this. And as you read through, I included in this packet a series of questions that have been recommended by other entities to think about as you read through the plan. And you have a very difficult job to balance what the residents want, what the legislature would like to see in the plan, and what financially is sustainable within the plan. So I'm excited to see your feedback and know you'll do a great job.
And then just as a follow-up to that, Alan's working on it, but we'll make the announcement, and then it'll put some pressure on him when he gets back from Disneyland. Sometime in March, we will be having the, I don't know, whatever you call that, the General Plan Committee celebration, where we get all the General Plan Committee members together and have a dinner and thank them for their work the last 2 years. So that will occur sometime in March. We don't know when. Once we do know that date, we will make sure that the entire council has been invited to that.
Okay. If there's nothing else on this, the next item listed on the agenda shows review of council rules subcommittees, council rule revisions. This was another one that we wanted to move towards the end of the meeting. There's no objection. We'll skip right over it. And then we have discuss proposed amendments to West Jordan City Code Title I. And there's quite a bit in here related to changing government, mayor's compensation, council appointments, council meetings, rules of conduct, campaign disclosure, and oath of office. The reason this one was first on the list for the heavier items was because there is one element of timeliness with it. Most of the items we could discuss at leisure and at length, but there's one item I want to hit on first. Cassidy, do you want to quickly talk through and then I'll wander back?
You want me to review what we need to be done quickly, or do you want an overarching of Title I?
Let me run with it for just a second then. One of the items that was proposed to be changed is the campaign finance disclosure date, to move this up to April rather than to June. If we're going to make that change, it needs to be done relatively quick for Ms. Sloan to take care of everything and get it in place. The other items, there's really not an element of timeliness, but it's all kind of wrapped up together with Title I. So my question from the council, we can do this one of two ways. We can go through and tackle everything in this chapter and then clean it up, pass it once and be done with it. Or if this is a modification that the council is favorable to, and I think we've expressed favorability previously, then we could take this, we could ask staff to create an updated version that has just this modification. We could bring that back in our next council meeting for ratification. And then all the other items that don't have an element of timeliness, we could address those a little bit later. So my hope was that we could talk about just this one item now, adjusting the date. If the council's okay with that, we'll say, give that direction to staff to bring it back, we'll move on, and we'll address everything else in Title I at another point in time. Councilmember Jacob.
Sure, if I can push the right button. You're now free to move about the captain. What's the impetus behind the date change? Somebody explain a little bit, like why April 1st and not June 1st?
Actually, Tangi already explained that to us, and it has to do with the election. It's because she's getting to do the campaign finances and then the election. It's a lot at one time. So she came before us earlier and asked if we could move it.
Okay, I might have missed that discussion for some reason. I don't recall it, but
Yeah. That was the reason, is just, it's
okay,
a lot
but-
all at one time.
Okay, it doesn't help a whole lot to know that it has to do with the election, but, okay, thanks.
It's,
Certainly. Go
if I can jump in, but I'm saying more or less the same thing Councilwoman Whitelock mentioned. It spreads out the workload. It's a request from the court recorder's office to spread the workload out. That first 2 weeks of June is very busy for them otherwise.
So, but this is not a big thing, right? It's 7 people sending out a spreadsheet. Most of them have zeros on it at most years. And it's an academic exercise, if nothing else. I mean, unless somebody's getting a lot more donations than I am. I don't, what workload, in other words, is it really, is it adding a lot? I mean, I don't know, other than her reminding us of what we're doing or what we're supposed to do.
Councilmember Green, then I'll chime in.
I was gonna say,
Or
we already
Councilmember
had this, the discussion of why we were gonna move it to April 1st. But Tangi's adopting some, if you go back to the last budget last summer, Tangi's purchasing some software, to, help with this. She's going through the transition, moving it up earlier will help solidify those reports. Even if there's nothing on the reports still take time. Knowing that this report is going into an election year, there will be some reports by the time April 1st rolls around. Because there have already been some campaign events hosted in this city. I know that. And so, and we, like I said, we already had the discussions. While I've got this, I would just as soon knock out this ordinance tonight and get it done with. I only have one change that I don't like is the proposed change that, and it doesn't make sense why we did it. So, I'd just as soon get this done.
Okay, if it's just that one,
I don't have
Okay.
much on this, so maybe that's the question, Chair. is-
Councilmember Green, will you
We have-
continue with the one modification you'd like? And
The modification that I think we need to make, and I just had it up and now I can't find it. Hold on, let me go back there. If you will,
Maybe go to Pat.
no, it's right, it was just an addition. Oh, it's qualifications for office. It's line number 215. It's page 13 of the PDF document. It's section C, and it specifically deals with the qualification for city council. And then right underneath that, it says election to council seats and mayor. Well, we shouldn't have the mayor's office, and then it goes down into time of the elections, and it throws the council seats and the mayor. If we want to pull it, so we know the mayor's elected every 4 years. Adding the section and saying and mayor to the qualifications of the city council section, the mayor's already got a section of code up above him for him. So what I'm suggesting is we either add to the section of the qualifications of the mayor and put down when the election is, but it doesn't make sense to have in the ordinance election of council seats and mayor when it's under the and everything in that section specifically talks about what it takes to qualify for either the at-large or the district seats. And then it says when the 3 at-large and the 4 district are being voted, and we threw the mayor in there, either put the mayor in his own section or pull time of elections out into a different section, but we can't put the mayor, mayor in the qualifications of the city council section. That just makes it contradictory and confusing.
Okay, Mr. Dowd, I see your light's on. Oh, I'm wondering if
That's the mayor.
that's the mayor's.
Oh, we have the wrong.
There we go. It was actually me that had the light on. This section, and I like what Council Chair McConaughey was saying, that he would like to break it into 2 pieces. When I took a look at this, there are a lot of things in this title that need adjustment, that need to be cleaned up. We didn't clean them up when we did the change in the form of government. We're going to come back and do those later. So I thought today was later, so I had Duncan redo a bunch. I don't know if he got them emailed out to you or not. Because by the time I saw this in the CSA and put it out and sent it over, it was very short time. It was just a couple of days. But I think this title needs a lot of help as I look through it. Councilmember Green brought up a couple of good points. There's a lot of other points as well. So if you'd like to discuss all those too, it would take a lot of time tonight. I'm happy to put in that time and share that with you if you want. However, due to the time constraints, if you want to just do the parts that the council chair was talking about and then come back and do this at a later date, where you would have an opportunity to look at the other sections that I have sent to you, instead of me trying to explain them all to you tonight and have it be your first view of it, which would be kind of rough.
Okay. Let me think on that for a
When were they
second.
sent out?
Mr. Councilmember Pack.
Oh, thank you, Chair. On line 311, the only thing I was going to mention again, as was mentioned in the past, is I certainly want to respect staff when they're saying, hey, that this would really help if we change the date. I'm curious if there's any credence to be had in assuming that there's going to be the biggest influx of donations post April 1st leading up to the election than there is pre-April 1st. And if we're just doing this, as was mentioned, as an academic exercise, I'm assuming that there's going to be people that would want more updated information that would be had in June. But I'm fine either way.
So my question is that the April 1st date was already, this council already approved it. Now it's back in this proposed ordinance, and now we're having discussions that we had back then. And my question is why? We made, the reason why it's April 1st in this draft is because we decided that. And now everybody's coming back and saying, I don't remember, what's the big deal? So I'm going to move to postpone the whole thing until March. And we can have the entire discussion, including the April 1st discussion again. So I'm going to make that motion.
Chair, I would be interested to know if there's more than 2 people that have angst with April 1st. If there aren't, I would suggest that we at least do that. We did have the discussion. I thought the body was okay with April 1st. We've had a staff member say that they need it done.
Yeah, so
So, pardon me for not remembering the discussion and not having it come clearly to my mind. I didn't say I had a problem with it. I didn't say I was stressing about it. I was just curious. I didn't remember the discussion, and I just wanted somebody to explain it to me, and just instead of just somebody pointing to it and say, is everybody okay with this? I just wanted to know why. That's all I wanted. Thank you.
And we explained that it was because Miss Sloan asked for that and her reason why. So I'm comfortable approving that tonight.
So what I think I'd like to do, if the council's okay with this, We do have 3 land use items, folks who are here to discuss those land use items. It looks like there are at least 4, if not more, that are in favorable of April. My thought is we at least plan on that, but this can be the first item that we come back to after those land use items. I'm not sure what modifications the mayor has to make, but that would be my thought. So
We haven't, here's the deal. This has been on the agenda for a couple of weeks. This has been, sorry, Mayor, but this has already been through the mayor's office and got reviewed, but wasn't good enough. Well, why did it even why are we even looking at it? We haven't got anything. Why don't we just say that we're going to amend, what I'm going to say is let's just modify, everything from line 291 down, because 291 has an April 1st date in it too. We modify and adopt and have the ordinance rewritten from line 291 down. Well, actually, you know what? Let's do it this way, because there's only a couple of Scrivener errors like it's and Utah Code annotated. Let's just adopt 115, let's just move forward 115-4, disclosure of campaign contributions expenditures. We move that forward for adoption, and then we bring the rest of the everything above back for discussion. What would we think about that?
from a procedural perspective, this has to come back for public hearing before we can do anything, right?
Why? This doesn't need a public hearing, it's an ordinance change. It's not a land use. We don't need a public hearing on that.
We're clear with Title I.
And the section that we're talking about doesn't address the mayor's salary. So why not just fix 115-4 and then bring the rest and make that the ordinance change and the make that attachment 1 of the resolution, pass the resolution and bring the rest of the ordinance back for discussion. I'm going to make that motion.
You can't
It should be in a
motion.
work section.
Councilmember Green, we're in work
We can
session.
make procedural motions in the work session. That's the way somebody can get the guidance of the council is we take a vote. And we can take votes in work sessions if they're procedural.
Yeah, no, my comment was just that since this was a work session, we didn't have to, we could just give direction to council staff. But
Well,
if you're
but the
more
only-
comfortable with the motion.
The only
we
way
can go
we're
that
gonna
route.
give good direction to council staff is if we have something that says who's in favor of it and who's not, because otherwise,
Chris can just ask us.
Yeah. Mr. Dodd and then Mr. Pack is waiting patiently.
That's fine, thanks.
A public hearing won't be needed on this ordinance change for this matter. So you can move forward.
Thank you. Mr. Pack.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yes, and I too was wondering why we were discussing it again. So my words were a comment, not a concern, if that helps clarify. So I don't have any problem with April 1st. It just came up as a discussion item again, so I was curious what was wrong with it too. When we're discussing, maybe we need to preface our comments with saying, is this a concern? Is this a question? So I apologize for any frustration. It was merely a comment, not a concern. I'm fine with April 1st. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Dodd, did you have something to add?
No.
Okay. So looking for formal motion, or Cassidy, does that give you, or maybe just quick show of hands, how many of the council are in favor of proceeding as Councilmember Green outlined? There we go. Does that work for you, Cassidy?
That is sufficient. Thank you for not making me do a motion.
Awesome. Okay, with nothing else on that one, let's move on to Iglesias requesting modification to the general land use map. This is, sorry, it's on another tab here. Lisa, is this one yours? Beautiful. please come address the council.
Hi, good evening, council members. Staff and the applicant of the Redwood Housing Project have 3 questions that we'd like some direction on in this project. Primarily, is the council interested in formally considering or willing to offer additional guidance on, 1, the request for the change in the general land use map from community commercial to professional office? Second, the request to add the senior housing overlay district to the existing professional office zone district. And 3, considering a development agreement with the applicant, which will delay the applicant's request for wet utility service until after the completion of the new cemetery tank. Cassidy, can you? Okay. Back to one more.
Sorry, I was correct before. There you go.
Okay, thank you. The concept that's been brought before us includes a senior housing apartment development, which is a 3-story building over podium parking. It'll have 31 bedroom units and 3 studio units. The parking requirement, as they have proposed, is 46 stalls, and they've provided 49. The amenities would include an exercise room, a group room, and this courtyard that's over the podium parking facing south. And the density is 58.9 units per acre. Because of the density and some of the surrounding developments, engineering would require a TIS for the project to be prepared when they come forward with their site plan.
TIS is an acronym for what again?
Oh, I'm sorry, traffic impacts.
Thank you.
So, go ahead. I just threw the site plan in here if you want to go back to it. If you want to go one more. Okay, so you can see the Willow Cove Apartments are to the west, the Fox Business Park condos, and the Stonebridge Apartments are to the east. And Jordan Credit Union is to the south of this. And the proposed future land use map, it shows here that the applicant's ask is in alignment with the properties to the east. And also this lot is already zoned professional office, so that would bring the future land use map designation and the zoning back into conformity with one another.
Lisa, is this the map that the general plan committee is submitting for us to look at? Is this what you're showing, or is this our old?
This is current.
Okay, so do
This
we
is
know,
current.
do you or does Larry know what the general plan committee says for this area? I just remember them talking a lot about wanting commercial along Redwood, so I just want to know. That will be important for me to know.
Okay. Okay, we will find that out. Okay. This is just a concept development plan, so we don't have a whole lot of the details yet. But I'm here and I believe the applicant is online, so if we can provide you any other information that'll help you answer the questions that we have.
I will jump in. The Land Use Committee has seen this twice now. And if I recall, help me if I'm mistaken, Councilmember Whitelock, but in both circumstances, the Land Use Committee said we didn't like this. Is that?
I would agree that we weren't really excited about it.
Yeah.
I believe Councilmember Worthen liked the senior housing idea, is what the positive was, that it was senior. But there were definitely some concerns.
All right, so the question for the council, shall we just take them in order? Is the current body interested in formally considering the request to change the general land use map from community commercial to professional office? Thoughts on that one?
I don't like the way it's putting just a professional office right in the middle of commercial, which then isn't going to be professional office, it's going to be housing. That concerns me because it never works out well when we put housing in the middle of other uses, and we're dealing with that still. So that's a concern for me, and I really want to know what the general plan committee wants on that spot.
Councilmember Whitelock, I do have the future land use map up if you would like to view it.
Yes, please.
Please.
Lisa, I'm in the right section, right? Okay, I'm seeing lots of nods. That's good.
So if I'm looking at this right, they've got it as commercial.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Green.
I'm with Councilmember Whitelock.
Councilmember Jacob.
The professional office doesn't bother me so much. Professional office is kind of a commercial use when it's a commercial use. So A, I'd be okay with. B, I'm not okay with because I don't like senior housing overlay as a professional office. Yeah, it's just, didn't like it when we added that to the code. Voted against it then, still don't like it.
It's a good segue to transition from question 1 to question 2, because I'm personally of the same mindset. I'd be okay with professional office. But question 2, will we be okay adding senior housing overlay on top of that? That it doesn't seem like it's achieving the purposes for which the senior housing overlay was created. Who else would like to chime in there?
I agree with you. Well, I have two comments on that. One, I'm not sure that first of all, I'm going to talk about the gateway to the city. It is the gateway to the city, and I'd like to take the billboard down, but that's a different story and not the topic of discussion tonight. Scott's laughing back there. But I'm not sure that I want the gateway of the community to be high-density residential apartments. And the reason why I say that is because 90th South Gateway, high-density residential apartments. 78 South Gateway, 78 I guess we could put it in there and we'd be consistent with every other entrance to the city. I don't know why we allowed all the high-density apartments to be on every corner that came into the city, but I'd like to have one entrance to the city that is not high-density apartments.
Okay, so with those comments shared, wondering how much conversation we need to have on question C about the appetite for a development agreement. I'm not seeing any lights quickly come up. Lisa, does this provide the feedback that the applicant was hoping for? Well,
Probably not.
I mean, they were asking for So I'm up here thinking, okay, the meeting got off to a little bit of a rocky start. We're talking about some of the meetings and some of the places where we feel like we're falling short, but I'm feeling like this one's been a bit of a win because we specifically said we want these work sessions so that we can talk about what, so that we can give applicants a chance to approach the council before they spend through a lot of time and resources, not just on their side, but on the city side with noticing for the planning commission and then for the city council just to come here and find out that, yeah, this could have been resolved in 15 minutes by asking the council, what do you guys think? So I feel like getting the feedback was a bit of a win tonight. Councilmember Pack.
Thank you, Chair. Curious for the Land Use Committee, was there discussion on this just isn't the right place? The project, what did you feel about the project? Because I think that might be a valuable piece of information for the applicant that maybe it's not so much the project, it's the place, and that there's a better place for this project.
One, there's a better place. Two, and I'll say it, this would be the first apartment complex, or a first apartment building in West Jordan City that approaches 60 units an acre. And we've not ever had I'm not sure that we have a project in the city right now that approaches 60 units an acre. Is that right, Scott? You're shaking your head east and west. So, you know, so the number also concerns me. The planned ERUs are low there. Commercial would have less of an impact on the utilities in that area. Also knowing that there are other uses in, I mean, when you're talking about it pulling up 35 ERUs, that's a lot of ERUs that there are other infill parts of pressure zone 1 that would, how much would this detract from, and I'm just thinking, and this is where I'm thinking, there is a lot of open acreage at 90th South and well, it's not 13th, it's 11th. There's a lot of open acreage at 90th South and 11th, 90th South and 12th, back behind, you know, where Congressman Owens' office is and everything. There is a lot of vacant land back there, and what I don't want to do is handcuff us by, and we got the utility report that this would have to wait, but what I would like to see is, if we, you know, and we don't have that, is if this takes the 35 whatever ERUs that it needs to have, or ERUs, takes the 35 ERUs, how does that impact the property to the east? That, do we have to build then another tank, or what do we have to do to fix to get the 90th South and 13th West area? Particularly, there's some redevelopment there that needs to happen. I'm not sure that I want to tie all the water up in this.
So, quick question for the council. I did briefly see, I'm assuming it was the applicant's hand go up online. Typically, this meeting doesn't allow for public comment, but since we do have a couple of these land use items, if the council's open to suspending the rules to allow the applicant to address the council for 3 minutes, I'd be happy to comply. I don't want to unilaterally decide that though, so if there's somebody from the council who would like to move to allow that, I don't see his hand up right now, but it would give the option to him and then other applicants for the other items tonight. Do we want to do that, or they've already had an opportunity to chat with the land use committee? This is a chance to hear from the full council. I'm kind of on the fence either way. I just want to be consistent. I don't want to say no to this one and then yes to somebody later. So, Councilmember Pack.
Right, thank you. I think in this case, it would help, just I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of the developer to figure out, well, is the council just against this project completely? Or is it just because I'm trying to put it on Redwood Road in professional office? And that would save us and the applicant time and money for a future application. So I think that if there's questions the applicant has that are germane to having some give and take, yes, that would be in the best interest of everyone. Same thing for similar applications like this, since that's what we're trying to do, is be more efficient with time and money. Thank you.
So, Councilmember Pack, are you okay letting them speak then?
Yes.
Yes, and I'm okay.
Go ahead. So just so it's formally noted for the record, I'll move to suspend the rules to allow applicants to address the council for up to 3 minutes.
I'll second that.
So motion by Councilmember McConaughey, second by Councilmember Green. All in favor, aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. All right. And is it Mr. Brett Anderson that's the applicant or designee?
I am not familiar with that name.
All right. Well, that's the hand that I'm seeing raised. So let me hit the button to allow to talk. Mr. Anderson, if you could give about a 5 to 10 second introduction, and then if you're the applicant, you can have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We sure can.
Thank you for this time. My name is Brett Anderson. I'm the attorney for Waleska. I share a common seat with you all. I'm also the mayor of Farmington, so I'm very familiar with these types of contentious issues. We have plenty of them that are being brought before us. I've been working with Waleska on these types of projects for some time now, and wanted just to kind of offer a perspective for you that maybe we'd hope that you'd consider for her application. We have a project in Farmington that presented almost identical what you're wrestling with Waleska's application here. A senior housing project smack dab in the middle of our commercial center. And when it came, my initial reaction was no. I don't like this. I want it to be all commercial in here. And we listened, and we had consultants that we hired. The developer came in with a consultant, and they tried to explain to us why it would be a good thing. And we ultimately came around and said, okay, we're going to do this. And here were some of the reasons that we did it. And I just want to offer these to you as food for thought as you consider this application. These types of developments, and we put a big one right in the middle of our unit. I think 180 units. It's 6 stories high, and it's right in the middle of our Station Park, which is kind of the gold ship of our commercial district in Farmington. That is right there. And the rationale for it was these types of occupants that house a senior facility like this are great neighbors. We don't have to worry about them creating problems. They don't actually even drive a lot. The number of trips on the traffic study was below average. And they also provide what was presented to us as a daytime population. People that will walk out of their apartment and spend their money at the restaurants and the stores right next door to where their housing unit is located. And we have these housing units now in our commercial areas, and it's proving true. Our sales tax revenue and our property tax revenues continue to outpace all of our projections. This daytime population is feeding the beast, as it were. They're coming in and they're keeping our commercial center alive during the day. And I was skeptical of that before we did it, and we found ourselves doing it. And now looking back, we're saying it was a great decision. So I would offer that to you, that sometimes it doesn't feel like it's something that we're used to doing, but when we step outside the box and consider there's a synergy that can occur between a high-density housing like this and a senior focused development right next to the commercial, it can create a very positive synergistic relationship between the two. And so I get where you're at. I appreciate what you're all doing. I understand the wrestle that this presents. There's always the concern that this is a domino and someone else is going to ask for the same thing. And these senior housing overlays are a really unique thing. And as I've met with the folks...
Thank you, Mayor. I apologize for cutting you off, but we are at time there. Oh, wow, that got hit already. Let me change that here. And before we go to the rest of the council, I'll just quickly chime in. Mayor Anderson, thank you for your comments. Many of us have looked extensively at Farmington Station, especially if we've been considering how we want to see development happen here in the downtown of West Jordan, and you've done some phenomenal things up there. The part that still gives me pause, though, you brought up some good points, but where I still have pause is the exact location. You mentioned it was in the middle of your development, whereas this is kind of on the opposite side of the street from where we have our commercial core. And then the other part is the scale. If this were larger than the half acre, I would be much more open to being supportive. I don't know that we've hit the point where there's sufficient critical mass to see that kind of driving daytime population that significantly improves the environment that we're seeing. So those were my two thoughts. I did appreciate your additional perspective, though. It did give something to think about. We've got a couple other lights here. We'll just start with Councilmember Jacob and kind of move down.
Yeah, you just kind of stole exactly what I was going to say. If this was part of a master plan downtown type of thing, these things are being picky tonight. Then yeah, I wouldn't mind it. As it is, 57 units per acre. Okay, so a little more than half that on a little more than half that land. So 30 something units on less than 6/10 of an acre. is a little, it's more dense than I want to see in a pocket like this. This is a pocket. If it was part of a master planned thing downtown, and I'm concepting through some ideas on my own for the downtown right now, that, just to kind of look through them. Then yeah, I mean, when that first came up, that concept plan and the rendering and all that, I'm like, this is cool. This is out of the ordinary. It's a little different. It's absolutely has a place in our city, just not this place. It belongs in a master plan downtown with stuff around it as part of a more collective, cohesive whole, not as a one-off. So where it's proposed, it would definitely be a one-off. Doesn't fit.
I'm trying to put my words together. I really like the plan. I don't mind how many units are there. I think that's great for senior housing. But I think if it was part of our downtown work, that you nailed it. That's where I was trying to find my words. I don't want it as a little pocket. I want it as part of a full community that we're making and building. But we need the senior housing. I like the location because it is convenient for anything. And I feel that having something like this will actually attract some more restaurants and businesses in the area. I think it's kind of that catch-22 and I really like it. So I'm torn on this, but I think we can make it better. And if we find a better location. So that's my end thought.
Oh, sorry, I thought Councilmember Pack's light was on. Actually, I just wanted to answer Councilmember Pack's question for the applicant. I remember that while I may not have voted for it, we did vote to do an overlay in like Jordan Landing. Maybe that would be a place for this, because then
I like that.
then they're in the middle of an area where there are services. I cannot imagine. I appreciate that in Farmington, it's probably in Farmington Station, so they're not walking across a highway, which Redwood Road is, a UDOT highway, to get to services. And that's what they'd have to do. And 9,000 South is also pretty much a highway. I can't imagine.
90 South is a speedway.
Well, not always. Sometimes it can just sit there like a parking lot.
Except for 90 South and 40 West.
So that would be my suggestion to the applicant, that if they wanted to look at another location, maybe that's a location that, because I agree, it is a nice project, and we did work with them on switching it up a bit, but it's not the right place for it.
And I was just going to add, if it was in Jordan Landing, it was across the street at the track station. If it was at Jordan Valley, if it was here at City Center, then it would help be part of a good master plan. But that part of 90th South and Redwood Road, until we can, face it, that part of 90th South and Redwood Road on a walkability scale of 1 to 10 is probably about a -8.
I really can't differ with Councilmember Green. All right, Ms. Elgin, anything else on this one?
I think we've got our answers.
Beautiful. Okay, next item on the agenda is potential general plan amendment, rezone, and master development agreement. This is about 53 acres located about 7100 South and U111. We'll give, since Cassidy's doing about 4 jobs tonight, we'll give her a second to get the slides up. But looks like Taylor is already up here. I assume this one's yours?
It is, thank you. If we go to the next slide. This is 53 acres, a little change. It's in the northwest corner of the city.
Looks like a lot more than 53 acres.
The Bland recycling parcel. Just want to go to the, it's just the blue. If we go to the next slide.
The light.
There we go.
So there we can see, again, on the right, that's the property, and on the left, you can just see the aerial. All right, move on. So the current zoning of the entire parcel is Business Research Park. It's adjacent to some multifamily residential and the PC zone. Current future land use plan for this is Research Park, and it's adjacent to some medium density residential. Go on. So this is the proposal which the applicant DAI has brought into us. So what they'd like to do is they would first like to amend the general plan. Everything that's not that purple corner would go to high density residential. That purple triangle would go to community commercial. And then they want to use the integrated housing ordinance on the bulk of the property where you're seeing the residential layout. There's a total of
Actually, the commercial has to be included in the integrated housing ordinance to make it integrated. That's part of the zone.
yes, but the general plan designation for that portion.
Okay.
In this project, there are 335 proposed units. 230 of those are townhomes. Those are the section you're seeing in the middle. And then at the north end, there's 105 single-family houses proposed. I'll go to the next slide. This is just a different view of that, how it kind of sits along Highway U-111, and that's the Jordan Meadows, I think is what that subdivision is called there at the PC development. So the questions that we wanted to bring forward today, we'll go to the next slide, are three, and that's kind of a fourth one as well. The first one is, does this concept meet the intent of the integrated housing ordinance? And if not, what would you, the council, like to see changed? Second question is, are we okay with the percentage of multifamily housing exceeding the standard in the integrated housing ordinance? 13.5 MC says multifamily housing should be no more than 50% of the housing units there. Third, is the 4.2 enough commercial acreage to meet your metrics and objectives of that ordinance? And then fourth, the applicant did include a packet where they have a number of amenities and stuff and elevations. We just wanted to get your feedback on if you like those, if there's things you'd like to see changed, and just kind of get your overall temperature on the project. The applicant has been very willing to work with us, and they came with us saying, we want to hear everything from the council. We want to get their honest feedback so we can make changes. They don't want to come and bring something in that's not going to be received well by the council. So if you have any thoughts, they're asking that you please don't hold back and deliver those tonight.
Okay, I've got, yes, in just a second.
Land use, I want
But,
to talk
yeah,
about land
yep.
use.
I want to give the applicant, so applicant's here, give them the option. Do you want to spend your 3 minutes now? Do you want to get first draft opinions and thoughts from the council and then use your 3 minutes and get feedback? You get three? Yeah, you get okay. Okay, sounds good. And this has been before our land use committee, so I want to hear from them. Although I do know I tend to get distracted very quickly. Like when the jazz van, there was a little Jazz Bear van that drove by earlier today. I want to get out my one comment before I forget. Since this is up against U-111, if there's anything we've learned from 90th South is sound wall, make sure something's in place before anything happens, before U-111 expands. I would want to make sure that that is captured somewhere there. It's totally separate from everything we're discussing tonight, but I wanted to make sure that was heard. So that's it. Councilmember Green.
So this has actually been before the land use committee twice. The first time that DAI came before the land use, they gave us two proposals. One that matched the PRDM zone, and it had a whole bunch of cookie cutter little squares of 4,100 square foot lots. Think about Welby West on steroids, because that's about what it was. They also had a second plan that was akin to this one. The land use committee said, yeah, but if you do this and this and this and this, come back. They came back and they did everything that the land use committee said and some more. And actually part of this is what led to the writing of the large scale part of the integrated housing ordinance. And I'll throw that out and then I'll reserve the rest of my comments here in a minute. But the land use committee has seen this twice. We really like the second concept, and that's why we actually suggested that we rewrite part of the ordinance to help make this work.
Councilmember Jacob.
Thanks. Can we flip back to the concept plan? Yeah, so not only is this my district, this is also my neighborhood. The existing development there is the Maples. And Maple Hills Park is just off the very north side of this picture, or the east side of this picture, because north is to the left. This has two entrances to U-111. Yeah, I'm gonna say not only do I not like this, but heck no, I don't like this. Way, 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 way more density than, I mean, if you were having all of it or most of it or funneling traffic to U-111, you can make an argument for density. Of course, density belongs on highways. This is a highway, that makes sense. But this neighborhood, this is gonna funnel out. People are gonna wanna go from here to Mountain View Corridor. They'll either go down 78th or they'll go up to 62nd. If they go down to 78th, that's going through the neighborhood. Yeah. Yeah, that's a lot of, it's a lot more intense than I'm comfortable with. Plus or minus 4.2 acres. I thought I said 24.2 acres on commercial. Commercial doesn't make sense wedged between two little houses like that. It's not the place, if you're gonna put commercial here, put commercial up on the north end of it, or take it all the way up to 62nd, put commercial on 62nd. Yeah, there's a lot of things about this that don't make sense. Not a fan, of that dense of use. Also, there are cool ways to integrate townhomes and single-family homes. Look at Daybreak, look at Wood Ranch, look at what even's being proposed over in the other ranch, Jones Ranch.
Bright Creek Highlands now.
Yeah, pick a designation, any designation. There are cool ways to integrate that. Separating out and segregating the townhomes from the single-family homes, I don't like. It creates two classes in the same neighborhood. I don't like that as much. I'd rather see it, if you're gonna integrate them more together. A little fewer multifamily, a little more single-family, and figure out a way to mix and match. But yeah, as it is, no, not a fan.
I like the changes that have evolved so far. I think we can do a little more. I do also echo the interchangeable with the mixed single and the townhouse, because I live in one of those neighborhoods and it is so nice to have that mixture instead of being separated. So it's a very positive thing for both, for the residents to not have that separation of like, oh, you're on the townhouse side. It's like like across the railroad tracks. So I want to bring our community together, and I think we can make a more cohesive plan with that to bring the folks together. I do worry about the traffic on U-111, but honestly, that commercial, is that something that we can put, like, what's the I mean, is it something like a gas station or that sort of thing? Is that what that is kind of? What's yeah, what is the, I don't remember reading which commercial that was for. Yeah, sorry.
It's got a wide variety of uses, so.
Yeah, I'm
a large
okay with
portion
that.
of Jordan Landing is the same SE2, so
I'm okay, yeah.
a whole range of commercial can go there.
Okay. But no, I like where it's going, and I don't mind the density. I just want it kind of mixed up together, but I'm actually excited for how nice this looks and for what's coming out west. So that's my comments.
So just a couple of things on this development. One, the reason why I do know this because of the land use and some other discussions, the reason why most of the townhomes are where they are is because of the topography of the land. It's an old gravel pit. And so it makes more sense to, unless I'm wrong, and DAI can, when they take their 3 minutes, talk about that. But the part of the reason why it's put there the way it is because of the topography and the gravel pit. When you talked about the number of townhomes versus houses, the actual draft ordinance of the integrated housing ordinance, and it changed, and then that's why there's an exception to the integrated housing ordinance, was that it would be 50% it could be 50% by acreage, and not by number. Yes, the numbers of the townhouse are skewed. If you'll also notice that the advantage to the left side of the screen, the single-family lots, is that you'll notice is that there are multiple sizes of units, multiple size lots in that unit, or in that section. They range from a 12,000 square foot lot that sits on top of a hill, down to 4,000 square foot lots and a bunch of 8,000 and others in between. So the idea is to have different types of housing stock in that same area. The other thing that would also occur to help with that integration when you talk about the two classes is that what you notice is that the clubhouse was in the middle of the townhomes. That clubhouse is supposed to be, at least the descriptions that we heard in land use committee, is to have some world-class amenities. And those amenities are for the use of everybody on the property. So the amenities there, along with the open space, and Councilmember McConaughey, your point's well taken about U-111 and the sound wall, but you'll notice that the way that this is designed, a lot of the open space actually runs against U-111 to actually provide that additional buffer along U-111 to deal with noise. The other thing, if I remember the discussions right, from land use and other places, is that DAI sets apart a lot of extra parking spots for, and maybe you guys can address that too, is that they really add a lot of additional parking spots for the townhomes and those kind of things. Like I said, the three of us, we like this enough that that's why part of the integrated housing ordinance was actually written, was to help address this kind of a neighborhood. So I will leave that at there. And
Couple of questions I forgot to mention. When U-111 expands, how much is that going to go into effect, taking away some of that green space? That's one I'm curious about. And is this part, with this being where it's at, is this going to have the same settling issues as our neighborhood just west of it, where we've had all the east of it? Sorry, yeah, it's east of it, where we've had a lot of foundation issues these last few years. That's my other concern.
I'm going to tell you, it probably doesn't have the settling issues because they dug it all out. But this isn't far. I will tell you, at least based on where I know they're at in the application process, this isn't far enough along to determine the geotech specs.
Okay.
What they're doing here's the deal. This particular design, because it does have the houses and the townhomes separate, and because of the numbers, requires us to adopt the exception in the integrated housing ordinance. So what they're asking for is how much of the exception under the ordinance are we willing to grant before they spend tons of money on traffic studies and all the other things that are going to go into an MDA. And by the way, I will throw in a plug, because the person sitting back here in the vest is named Chase, and he used to work for a law firm that I'm kind of affiliated with sometimes when I actually can do some work. He works for DAI now. He sent me a copy of the draft MDA, and if you've never seen such a detailed MDA in your life, it's a great MDA. But the one thing that I will put the plug in here is that in the MDA, and because of the integrated housing ordinance, DAI will set aside the appropriate percentage in the townhomes. Oh, and by the way, these townhomes are all rentals, managed by one property owner. It will meet the appropriate percentage. What is that? The 3% I don't remember, you can address that when you get up here. It will meet the appropriate number of units that will be maintained for affordable housing per the ordinance. They have bought off on that. They're not resisting the affordable housing component and are willing to set that aside. Hope that helps.
So,
Yeah.
Councilmember Whitelock, and then I'll go.
Is there a letter in here from Mr. Davenport on utilities, and I'm just not finding it now? And also on your, the, I don't know what we call it, the city presentation, I couldn't get it to load at home, but I thought, okay, it's probably just my crappy internet. But it's not loading here all the way either, so I've got to see portions of it, but not all of it.
Okay. I don't know why that happened. I did download it before I came over here and I printed it out. I just left my packet at the office, but it did print on my work computer. So I'm sorry that that happened.
It's just not loading, so I can't review it all.
As for, has Mr. Davenport looked at it? They're not at that stage yet. The applicant does know that there will have to be significant reviews of the adequate public facilities, and it's likely going to require some investment from them if this were to go forward. One question the staff had that I just wanted to make sure we were addressing as well. When we looked at it, the integrated nature of the housing was one of our biggest questions. It didn't feel like it met that. Specifically, there's only one road access between the two sections of housing. Is that okay? Do we want to add a second leg there, or at least some pedestrian connections? The problem we don't like in the planning is, there could be houses that were 5 feet apart from each other, but if you want to walk there, you have to walk 2 miles to get to your friend's house that lives right behind you. So if that's something the council wants to consider and get feedback on, we would appreciate that as well.
Councilmember Jacob, then I'll
So
chime in.
again, if it was integrated housing, you wouldn't have to worry about it. If they're all, this is separate but equal. This isn't integrated. So if we can go back to the civil rights era, this isn't integrated. This is, you got the townhomes down here, and if they're all rentals, even more, no way. Oh my gosh, really? They're all rentals? Okay, I live in the neighborhood that's on the right of this picture. Every person in that neighborhood is going to vigorously oppose this.
What's wrong with rentals?
I'm a rental, Pamela lives in a rental. I get it. But we have the option of buying, well, I have the option of buying my house. I don't know if you do, but if I want to buy my house, I will. And the property value goes back to what's sane, I might. But my neighbors own their house. My neighbor next to them owns their house. I'm saying this is how many hundred rental units? This is if they're rental units, it's not townhomes. It's an apartment complex, and a really big one. So yeah, I don't like that at all. But if you can integrate townhomes that with an option to buy with single family homes and integrate them, then you might be knocking on the right door. But as it is, you're building a great big rental unit. Yeah, I can just tell you, everybody in that neighborhood is going to oppose this vigorously. Yeah, I hope you have a good PR firm ready to go and ready to do some door knocking, because you're going to need it.
All right, so if we could go back to the list of questions, I want to make sure we hit everything on that. But before we do, on this slide, the one thing I want to bring up, the only thing I'd share that hasn't been really touched on, as Councilmember Jacob kind of pointed out, the connections to U111, I really do want to look closely at that. We're seeing the entrance to the gravel pit on the other side of the road that's kind of offset. I'm wondering, where do we anticipate stoplights will be, or what will the future of this look like? I'm flashing back to a not so distant fatal car accident with some heavy equipment that happened out on that road. And I know that we have a lot of equipment out there frequently. Looking at townhomes, I'm assuming there's going to be young kids out there. I want to be especially careful of what we do with traffic on U111. So I'm probably most interested in the traffic impact study. Scott, did you have something to add, or were you coming up for something separate?
No, I wanted to just answer your question about the intersections. So we have an interlocal agreement with UDOT, and it's already predetermined those major intersections. One's at 74th, which is that south connection that'll lead into the main entrance into Wood Ranch. And then on the north end, which is the left-hand side of the screen, That is 70th South, and so that'll be another.
So the middle one that's existing right now on the west side or on the bottom of the screen, that's going to go away.
That's a temporary access for the gravel pit.
Temporary, as in it's only been around for 40-ish years.
That's actually, it's been improved and enhanced recently. But that is, Hadco's using that right now for the gravel operations, but that will go away as Wood Ranch develops.
Okay, thank you. That's probably my biggest concern there. If we could go to the questions now, I'd like to make sure that we answer each one of these, and then we'll give the applicant their time. Does the concept meet the intent of integrated housing ordinance? I've heard a yes, I've heard a no. I see a couple,
It does, because that's the way it was written.
All right, so we have one affirmative and others that are hesitant to hit the button. Okay, next question. Is the council okay with the proposed percentage of multifamily?
I am.
I could be, but not the way it's laid out right now.
Okay. So the feeling I'm getting from the council is there's not loud, significant, immediate opposition, and some could warm to it. 3, is the proposed 4.2 acre commercial parcel integrated and large enough to serve the proposed development? Okay, and would it be possible to switch your mic to the other side? I got a text from somebody listening at home, since they're directional mics.
Yeah.
They're obnoxious.
I think Councilmember Bloom had a good question, and my concern is where we have our commercial. I don't know how big Mountain View is going to get, but it's already only 4.2. And if they go in there, does that take that commercial away? That's a concern. And I don't know if anyone can really address that. I don't know.
Mountain View, are you talking about you?
Oh,
UN11,
UN11. Sorry, UN11, not Mountain View, UN11. So, so it's a concern. The commercial where it's at and the size is a concern because it could be taken away if UN11 is expanded and then there's no commercial.
So clarification from Mr. Langford on this, the future of U-111, in my mind, I'm seeing this as something similar to Redwood Road versus Mountain View Corridor.
Yes.
Can you better than me describe what the future of that's anticipated at this point in time?
I was just conferring with Mr. Davenport, and we both remember that the agreement that we've got with UDOT right now is a 7-lane road, and it's approximately 125 feet wide. It's a very wide right-of-way.
So seven lanes for folks that may not be familiar. You've got 2 lanes going each way, 1 middle lane, so there's 5, and then the shoulders.
It's 3 lanes.
3 lanes each way.
And right.
And okay.
Yeah, so essentially what you have out here.
So it could be 9.
Yeah, the lanes are not, the shoulders are not counted towards lanes, yes.
Okay.
So,
What Mr. Davenport in the back is saying is it's going to be like 90th South is anticipated to be in a few years. Okay. Thank you. Yes.
Well, then that does take in the concern for how much commercial footage there is there. You're right. That's why I was concerned about that, because it's going to take away the green space and it's going to take away a lot of that commercial. So depending on, my thing finally loaded so I can see again the commercial stuff. And depending on what it is, it'll suit it. But it's all variables at that point for the commercial with the space that's eventually going to get taken away.
Okay. Question number 4. Any additional feedback we'd share at this point?
I started with question number 4.
Same here.
I like it. I think we need to really take an account of that road widening and go from there. Absolutely.
I'm hesitant to think that that commercial will ever be built just because of the commercial on the corner of 78th and U-111 that has been proposed and sitting there forever on two opposite corners of 78th and U-111 that already has the traffic, that already has the residential around it, and still sits and waits. That commercial's never going to get built. It'll sit there forever. And then in 20 years, somebody will propose putting houses on it and say, well, we tried to market it as commercial for the last 20 years. It just won't ever happen.
Well, U111 is gonna have a lot more traffic. You're gonna have Daybreak, Wood Ranch, sorry. You're gonna have Wood Ranch across the street. This will be on the corner of U111 and 7400 South. I think you just hit it. I think it's a perfect spot
Perfect spot for a gas station.
for some sort of Maverick. Yeah, I wasn't gonna say that. It's a perfect spot for something like a Maverick or, some sort of convenience store to help with in the neighborhood. But I'll leave my other, sarcastic comments, alone.
All right, I'm not seeing any additional lights up. Therefore, since we suspended the rules to allow the applicant to address the council for up to 3 minutes, would invite them to do so, and then we'll share any additional feedback. So if you would, same thing, if you would take 10 to 15 seconds to briefly introduce yourself, then the 3 minutes will begin.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Chase Andreezy here on behalf of the applicant. Appreciate your time tonight. I'll forego my 29-page slide presentation that I prepared, but you do all have that, so you can peruse through that, and hopefully it's self-explanatory as to some of the changes we've made, some of the things that we've incorporated as we've gone through this process with Taylor, who's been great to work with, and your other staff and the land use committee. So I'll go shotgun approach since our time is short here. We have done a geotech. The soils are good in this location. We've also completed a traffic impact study that's based upon this concept plan. So we recognize that as this is an iterative process, if the concept changes, we can update that traffic impact study, but that is on file with your staff and that's available to you if you'd like to look at it. I'll hit a couple more things that came up just really rapid fire here. We have tried to overpark this area. We've looked at what your code requires, and we've compared that to how we like to design our own projects. For just the multifamily side, for the townhome side, we're at 4.4 parking spaces per unit. So that includes garages, driveways, and then on-street parking, which you can see along that is the east road, along the retention pond there, that there's some parallel parking. That's a proposal. We're not sure if that complies with what your standard cross-section allows, but again, we've tried to overpark this so that the typical parking issues that are associated with multifamily are mitigated to a large extent. You'll see with this plan, we've also kind of loaded a lot of the amenities and green and open space into that townhome area. We believe that this complies with the intent of the ordinance as drafted, at least as granted within the exception that's permitted for council to make. And so we are asking for a little bit of that discretion to be exercised here. We recognize that given the complexity of this site, I mean, the council called it out, right, that this is 53 acres. It looks very deceiving as you kind of orient yourself about where that's located, but also kind of how the site is sandwiched by U111 and then the tracks to the east of it. So given the topography, given the layout, given the site restrictions, we've tried to design it, having the multifamily and the single family the best that we could. There's also obviously requirements that we have an HOA managing that open space, those amenities, and that's much simpler from a management perspective to have a lot of that common space, a lot of those amenities similar in area, in capacity. So that makes it a little bit easier from a management perspective. Obviously, we're here for your feedback and direction, so we would accept any additional direction you might have in how we could make this a little more integrated while also taking into account the site restrictions that are there.
20 seconds.
Okay. Lot sizes, again, as Councilmember Green pointed out, they range anywhere from 4,400 up to 14,000 square feet. We try to provide a number of different sizes of single-family homes. And the one more point on the commercial. So the ordinance requires 5% of the total space. We're at about 8% for that site. So.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Council, any additional feedback or observations to offer?
I will just offer, just keep in mind that the single family lot size has changed. It's different. The townhomes, yes, there may be a lot of number, but if it's managed by one group, that means they're always going to be maintained. It's not going to be where a lot of these smaller houses could be sold and then bought and sold and have issues. Those will always be maintained because they have to maintain the value for their rental. So I will just throw that out, and I'll just throw it out. If we approved Welby West, we shouldn't have any problems approving this.
Apples and Army tanks, as far as comparison goes.
No, not anywhere close. This is 6.6 unit, overall, this is 6.6 units per acre. We're not that far off from what Welby West was with their 5.5 that they started out with 12 units per acre, and all we got was 65 little cookie cutter box houses.
I like where it's going, and I look forward to seeing the development of it, as development changes of it.
Cassidy.
I just wanted to follow up with Councilmember Whitelock's comment on the presentation. It is loading in PrimeGov, but the applicant really did a great job at making it a large file size with some beautiful pictures and renderings. So I will work with PrimeGov and with Cindy and Alan to possibly compress those files in the future so you can access them.
All right. Taylor, anything else? Okay. Thank you. We will move on then. Our next item is, let's see here, 6700 West. I didn't want to download. I just want to pop that to a new tab, but Larry's here to help explain anyway.
Unless you don't want me to.
You'll do far better than I, so
No,
please
thank
proceed.
you. Thank you, council. You can probably go to the next slide, next one. So this is just a contextual slide. As last summer, the council approved the Southwest Quadrant, which is this property that's dashed. You can see on the far left-hand side is the Amazon building, and to the right side, kind of outside the boundaries of the Southwest Quadrant line, is the Boeing building, and then you can see our 2 water tanks and Echo Ridge subdivision. Okay, next slide, Cassidy. And so I won't read all of these, but the objective of the Southwest Quadrant is basically to create a commercial industrial job center with a variety of housing options and high-paying jobs, and to really create kind of a bookend to the Northwest Quadrant, but where people can work at the south end part of the valley with good high-paying jobs. Okay, next slide. And so by and large, the vast majority of the property is owned by either one of the Jones family, either the Merlin or the Lamar Jones family. There were big dry farmers in that area, but what Gardner Company has been working with in the Southwest Quadrant is Mike Jones and the Merlin Jones family. And you can see McDougal and Olson own a sizable piece right in the middle of it, and they've also had contact with them. So go ahead, Cassidy. And this is a good slide that Gardner prepared. It really shows that they followed the council's direction, and they are planning on developing a lot of commercial industrial job center in this area. A lot of the housing has been reduced, so you can see it's 85% of the light lime green area is a commercial industrial job center use. Okay, go ahead. And this is how it'll phase. Phase 1, of course, is a large 1 million square foot building that is currently under construction, and the other portion has been sold to a firm that will be building large buildings on that. Phase 2 right now is currently a large warehouse manufacturing facility, Fortune 50 company, they call it, is looking to occupy that site. So there is activity in the area, both in phase one and phase two. You can see right to the Fort Rent residential. Now, as I said earlier, the southwest quadrant anticipates a housing buffer between the industrial and existing residential. And right below the two water tanks on New Bingham Highway would be a residential buffer between the existing single-family Echo Ridge and the much more intensive use of the commercial industrial job center uses to the west. Okay, Cassidy, you can go to the next slide. This is a graphic that shows what we anticipate, where in this area we anticipate the residential buffers to be. The one at the bottom, of course, is right off of New Bingham Highway. It will buffer the Echo Ridge subdivision with residential. And to the top, the north, it would be south of 90th South and would buffer Jones Ranch and the existing residential. And the large area in the white, of course, would be commercial industrial job center uses. Okay, next slide. And this is just some renderings. You can kind of scroll through these quickly of what the applicant is proposing to build, the type of architecture types. And this is the residential phasing. Phase one would, of course, be the one we're talking of mostly tonight. And that would be right west of Echo Ridge subdivision. And it would be a multifamily apartment complex that would be a for rent residential. Gardner Company would build a park that buffers Echo Ridge and the rental residential. And of course, the rental residential will act as a buffer between the more intense commercial uses. Next slide. I can see if I could. So this is. You look at the very top, kind of top right, it shows the park design now. Gardner Company met with our Parks Department, and we have discussed, and our Utilities Department, and discussed park design. What does the Parks Department want to see in these parks? What kind of amenities do they need? What don't they want? Where can they put things over existing pipelines? There's a large pipeline that runs right along the eastern side of this park. So they really have worked with our Parks Department to kind of vet what the Parks Department wants to see, what they can maintain reasonably, and what is sustainable under a very, very strict budget that the Parks Department has to work under. Okay, next slide. And this would be kind of an aerial view looking to the west. If you were right on top of Echo Ridge, this is what you would see. Of course, you'd see this park buffer, a kind of a clubhouse feature, then of course the apartment complexes, and then farther to the west would be renderings of the Fortune 50 commercial building plus some other commercial office type buildings on New Bingham Highway. Next slide. And then this is just another, park rendering. I don't want to go through that. There's tennis courts, pickleball courts, and then just keep scrolling through these, Cassidy. This is another rendering that was in your packet. It shows, pickleball courts, which seems to be all the rage. Never played the game, but people love it. Apparently soccer fields, a basketball court, things like that. Things that our Parks Department feel are really needed in this part of West Jordan. Next slide. Just keep scrolling. Go ahead.
Larry, this park that they're building is tied to the detention pond and would be dedicated to the city?
Correct. Built by them, dedicated to the city. Okay. Gardner Company held a meeting with the residents of Echo Ridge. last week. In fact, it was last Tuesday. And to see their feedback, I think that, and Mr. Seastrand, who is here, has been in contact with kind of a neighborhood spokesman for Echo Ridge, but this is the bullet points that came out, or the main comments that came out of the meeting with the residents of Echo Ridge. So one of the things is the residents prefer not to connect the two developments to avoid overflow parking on the streets. Residents also expressed concern about through traffic increasing. That could be a concern, however, I would caution to make that the last thing you eliminate. It's not good to not connect neighborhoods. That's just my editorial. That's the only time I'll editorialize on these comments. I like connected neighborhoods. Wanting the apartment amenities to be good enough, that the park is not the only amenity, that the apartment residents use. So what they're saying is that the apartment complex also needs to provide their own amenities, so that the park will truly be a public park, that the residents of Echo Ridge and other single-family residents around there won't feel like, well, we're just in the amenities of the apartment complex. Park lighting, the residents don't want bright lights illuminating the pickleball courts and other sports courts at night. They want trail connectivity to Barney's Watch and Ronwood Park. I think that's an excellent ask. And of course, this is something that the council has never heard. They want proximity to retail and additional retail shopping. I wish
Think
that,
about Trader Joe's or Costco.
yeah, or a steakhouse, okay? Yeah, maybe. And so, that's just so the apartment parking ratio. They're very concerned about overflow parking. However, when this apartment is built, it will be built up to current code. It won't be restricted. And I think the reason that they're concerned about it, and they have a very good reason to be concerned about it, is the apartment complex on New Bingham Highway across from Echo Ridge was given a parking reduction when it was built of so it reduced the parking by 40 units or 40 parking stalls. And so when this apartment complex, if it is built, it will be built up to current standards with not only what is in code, but also the required amount of guest parking. Because I can understand their concern is having people park up into the subdivision and that type of thing. They had concern with apartments, the security and property management of the apartments. It comes down to a management issue, usually, and hopefully this will be owned by one group that will take care of the security concerns and really run a nice complex. They want to know when the park's going to be built. I think that we would require this at day one, if apartments were to be approved in this location. And last but not least, we cannot forget the puppies, but they want a dog park and a pet reliever area. I've never heard of something called a pet reliever area. That's usually my lawn for my neighbor's dogs. And so there is kind of. Yeah, kind of. So, yeah, by Ronwood. And so, yeah. So those are the comments from the open house. Did you put my questions up here, or do I need to go grab them?
So just in the future, any developers that are listening, it would be nice if the council was made aware of these. That was one of my questions for this tonight. When is the open house? Because it said they were having one. And some of us like to go and hear the residents ourselves. So if we could just be invited, that'd be super.
The more. Let me restart that statement. we would very much welcome an invitation to the at-large council members as well as the council members that live in that district. Anytime there's an open house for development of that sort. Usually the council members are happy to help spread the word of that open house as well. Anyway, Mr. Gardner, back to you.
And I do think the applicant, you did reach out to Alan, yeah, about this, so. So anyway, so the questions I have, I'm sorry they're not on the screen, I wasn't prepared, but does the conceptual park plan provide adequate buffer between the existing single-family homes of Echo Ridge and the conceptual multifamily?
Cassidy, can you put the picture back up?
Yeah, maybe.
That'll work.
There you go. So does the conceptual park design provide adequate recreational amenities for the existing and future residents? Number 3, does the conceptual multifamily provide an adequate buffer between the more intense commercial uses and the existing single-family home? And does the city council have not only comments on the park design, but on the whole entire thought?
All right, first question, is it possible to get these questions on that back television as well so we don't have to look behind us? But first question here, does the conceptual park plan provide an adequate buffer between existing single family and the conceptual multifamily? One head nodding.
Can we
one
look at
light.
can we look at the picture while we ask the questions? Because now I have to recall, I guess I could pull it up on my computer.
I'm all for making Cassidy do 5 things.
Having looked at it and reviewed it, I think it does. I think it provides plenty, and I like how it's planned.
Has this one already gone to land use?
I got it, Cassidy.
We've
I'm
seen
pulling it up.
this. How many times have we seen this, Ben? At least 3? I was gonna say, we've seen this at least 3 or 4 times.
And they were very good to listen because we worked together on getting these buffers, and I appreciate that.
It was also easier to load when we looked at it, so.
Anything else to share on the first question? Does the conceptual park plan provide an adequate buffer?
I'm okay with it.
Okay. Sounds like people seem to be okay with that. Number 2, does the conceptual park design provide adequate recreational amenities for the existing and future residents?
How many pickleball courts? What? Never mind.
So I guess I want to know, Mr. Gardner, and I should know, but in the apartment complex itself, to answer the residents' question, what will they have inside there itself?
I couldn't answer that right now, but it will be something. So we'll make sure maybe Mr. Seastrom can answer that.
He just said he could answer it, so when
There
he
you
comes
go.
up a few minutes.
Sorry about
after we
that,
get through the
Councilman
question.
Whitelock, so,
Thank you.
Councilperson Whitelock.
You're fine.
All right. Question number 3, does the conceptual multifamily provide an adequate buffer between the more intense commercial uses and the single-family homes of Echo Ridge? Thumbs up, one nodding head, another thumbs up, some, looks like general acceptance, and I'm not sure I would call it full support, but agreeability. Okay, number 4, any other comments? We probably should have started with this one, but Councilmember Green.
I do like the idea, and I don't know how we would do it, but I do like the idea of connecting the trails across New Bingham Highway over to Ron Wood. Now, whether that's a box culvert or something like that, boy, that would be a super amenity, because then the person who's walking their dog only has to walk across the street without dodging 350 semis and get to Ron Wood and use the dog park.
I think it's a good thing, if it doesn't happen in the next 5 or 10 years, it's a good thing to start planning for and to eventually have that. And I don't think it's on any maps right now.
Cassidy, can you pull up the concept of the overall, oh, here, never mind, you know what, I can do it. I think I have one no, I'm looking at one that's a little bit more detailed, the concept site plan. Let me just pull that one up.
Not the one he wants.
It's probably not the one.
I already showed him out.
What I want to make sure of, and is, and I think I brought the one up, but what I want to make sure of is and I think we're close with the street design, but I'm going to pull this out. I bought this week. There's a book out by the National City of Transportation Officials called Urban Street Design. And I think that what we would do ourselves a disservice if we don't start using some of these street designs. And some of the concepts, for example, are when you go into a neighborhood, put the bulbs in and make it kind of a gateway so that it narrows the street going into a residential neighborhood so people don't speed. I think some of the neighbors' concern about traffic might be alleviated if we look at the appropriate street design and we build in, heaven forbid, we build in the calming measures now that should be built in as part of a new street design. Whether that's a bulb out, those bulb outs that stick out, so you have mid-block crosswalk, something like that. And as I was reading the book, it's really cool because then you can, once you do those, you can integrate bioswales, and that actually, and I hope, Greg, I hope I said that right, that helps with actual stormwater filtration and detention to clean it up as we have rainstorms. Those things can be used. So I would just make a suggestion as we look at the streets and the street cross sections that we put the traffic calming measures in to help with the Echo Ridge neighborhood, that everybody will see that there's traffic calming measures so that we don't turn that into a raceway to get in and out of Echo Ridge or those kind of things, if that makes sense. Ben, did that ever make sense? Did any of that make sense?
All right, I'm not seeing any other lights for sort of comments, so if the applicant would like to take 3 minutes to address the council, either provide additional information, push on additional questions you'd like to have us answer, or try to provide leading questions to get better answers for what we may have already provided, please come to the table.
And just a general observation, that 3 minutes goes fast, I think, for developers.
This time, instead of interrupting at the 22nd, I will raise my hand at the 22nd so you know that it's just about there.
Here. Okay, I can't believe you're giving me 3 minutes. Big mistake. No, thank you. I'd like to thank everybody on staff, and thanks for looking at this. I think just overarching, having this meeting and being able to get feedback prior to meetings, I wish more cities were taking this approach. It's very appreciated from developer standpoint. Staff has been fantastic working on this. It's been a process. We've been involved out here for over 2 years, working with Mike Jones, his family. We really want to create a legacy project, something his family's proud of, something that we're meeting the city goals. And we've really taken the approach to be a partner on this project with the city and with the Jones family. So what you're looking at tonight is kind of a byproduct of all that work and everything that's gone into this. We're specifically the area south of New Bingham that we're kind of calling this first phase, is where we do look at starting. To the north, there'll be more, ideally getting to master plan, so much acreage it's a unique opportunity. It's something we don't want to mess up. So as you're talking to trail connectivity, other things, it's something future phases, future MDAs we'll see, but it's a priority for us to have things connect, to be able to get to Ronwood. That crossing there at 6700 where we see this trail will kind of get to that connection. Once 90 South comes in and that becomes a city road, New Bingham, that crossing and a traffic signal that'll facilitate that and be able to get up there. I'm already getting stressed for time now. So as far as to your comment on the amenity building, we're very conceptual at this point. So we'll flush out those amenities, but we want them to complement the park. We hear the residents on what they're saying is they don't want the park to be the only amenity, and we understand that this complex, it's going to have its own amenities, and we want that. And so it'll have an amenity building, and furthermore, we'll define those, and I think they'll be defined more in the MDA when we get to that stage. But it's something we'll be very aware of. Urban street design, I think, and I apologize on the meeting with the residents. I take full responsibility. I did not take enough initiative to make sure you guys knew about it and were invited. So that's definitely on my part. But we've had a great relationship working with that community, with Amy Knutson, the HOA presidents, that group there. They've been great to give us feedback. Yeah, I'll take that.
No, Scott
Oh.
wanted to know what the name, I'll let him borrow.
Oh, the book? Yeah, let's get him that book, because they're overarching, we've taken their feedback, we really understand all of it. Going to your urban street design, that's, okay, oh shoot. That roundabout that you're seeing there, we're trying to kind of meet in the middle of hearing the residents of their concerns of having that cross access, but also meet the requirements of street connectivity. And so we're trying to find the middle ground there, and it's something we look forward to working with you guys on. But sorry, I wasted my 3 minutes, but thank you.
That's okay. And, we gave you about 10, 15 seconds for a quick introduction, but it seemed like that part got missed. Could you share
Absolutely.
your name
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
just so we can make sure that we've got name and company?
For sure. So Ben Seastrand with the Gardner Group.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Seastrand.
Thank you.
All right. After his comments, is there anything anyone else would like to add? I think I'll start first. One of the things I kind of wanted to respond to the resident survey, because I think there's some items in there that they may be asking for now out of fear that I think they might have a different opinion of once things are done. For example, the lighting of the courts, want to make sure that they're not too lit. Every other park in our neighborhood where I live, they say we would prefer that these be well lit. Given the LED lights that we have now, the ability to directionally focus them, it's not the same issue with some of the incandescent lights from years ago. So I think they'll probably change their name on that. I'm not sure. Mr. Gardner commented that he was going to editorialize. I'm not sure that was so much as of an editorial as it was a professional opinion, which I happen to agree with. Having the neighborhoods connected, having a disconnection between neighborhoods is something that older neighborhoods tend to try and overcome and have many issues trying to compensate for. Once the neighborhood's been around for 20, 30 years, it's something that we've struggled with significantly in my neighborhood, and I would rather see them connected up front. And I think in the future, looking back, they will have would wished for the same, however grammatically you would say that. Any other comments from the council?
Just one quick question. Larry, you may have mentioned this and I probably just spaced it because apparently I do that. The parks are gonna be city-owned, maintained parks, or are these?
Correct.
Okay.
Built by the developer, dedicated to the city,
Awesome.
for
Yeah,
the city to take care of forever.
thank you. Love that. No, I just want to make sure that they're accessible to everybody in the city, because when they're privately owned or HOA owned, then there's like people stepping on toes and stuff.
All right.
Yeah, it extends that detention pond that borders New Bingham is the north end of this park.
Okay.
I'm gonna, are we?
I believe, is there anything else that's needed from us on this one? All right.
I'm gonna move for a 7-minute recess.
That would put us reconvening at 7:40. I will second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Nay. We'll reconvene at 7:40. 90-second warning. All right, we are now at 7:40.
Oh, I know what the other
So-
one was. There was something in that ordinance that I needed to look at. to use for this ordinance.
All right, I will call the committee of the whole meeting back to order. And as mentioned originally in tonight's meeting, my hope was that we could put the agenda in such a way that we could knock out some quick wins first. I will readily admit that I should not have, after this amount of time on the council, I should have been smarter than to know there's no such thing as a quick win. So we will circle back. And first item to tackle is Title I. Cassidy, I know we're jumping a little bit around, but
We want to go back
awesome.
to Title I?
There we go. Yeah, so this was the agenda item E, discuss proposed amendments to West Jordan City Code Title I. A lot of housekeeping items. We talked briefly about the need to change the date, but Cassidy, can you talk through everything that you had that you wanted to bring up before we start discussing this as a whole as a council again?
Yes, so there are a lot of changes in Title I. Some of the biggest changes include the date that we've discussed already. Within this definition section, we are doing cleanup in the code per my request because I love reading code and I love when it's clean code to get rid of his and hers throughout the code since we have some just his references, even though we have various people within the city who don't identify with his. So we're trying to remove that and make it consistent to probably, something we're working on. This definitions section goes through and fixes a new issue that we created with creating the public utilities department within the city. So that's what these definitions fix. We also have the mayor's salary. If you remember, a few weeks ago, we went through the process to kind of state, all right, this is what the council expects to see within the budget. And before, the code wasn't very clear about that process. So this clarifies that as well. And another issue is it was kind of vague as to whether or not we were talking about the upcoming mayor who'd be elected in the next election versus changing the salary of the sitting mayor. They're two different processes. So this helps clean that up. We also have certain committees that we do not have liaisons to that we have to vote for, so those have been removed. Go to annotated. Sorry, just double checking. This is for subcommittees, meetings. Do you want to talk about this one, Chair McConaughey, or
I do.
Councilmember Green? If that's
I
appropriate.
want to, as we were looking at changes to the rules, we deleted in the rules and just went to one simple list, referrals or autonomous committees. I want to strike this because most of our committees are autonomous committees. And if we need to refer something, we can, but let's just let the committees operate. And so I'd like to strike out line, I thought I had only the one change, but I want to strike line 88.
All right. Any objections to that? I see a lot of heads shaking no. So
We'll make that note.
Yeah, when this comes back, since we're not going to be like wordsmithing within a motion, I'm hoping that whoever comes back and updates listens to the recording. So any modifications, please make very, very clearly so somebody could understand exactly what needs to be done without having the same visual in front. So please reference those line numbers as Councilmember Green did. Sorry, thank you. Continue, Cassidy.
Thank you. We also made some corrections to the meeting schedule to show that we do adopt it by ordinance, which you did at the beginning of this year. Yes.
Here's the question why, and I want to ask Paul this question. Why would we adopt a city council's calendar by ordinance that gives the mayor the right to veto it, where if it's a resolution, it binds us? I think the word needs to stay resolution. What do you think, Paul? So my question is, why would we make it an ordinance that the mayor could actually veto our council calendar? We're the ones that decide our calendar, and so it shouldn't be subject to veto, and resolutions normally aren't subject to veto the way I read 10-3-20 something.
Well, I don't know if that's actually a legal question on that issue, but I do think, you would have the option to do it either way, whichever the council would prefer.
Mayor, what do you think?
I think I didn't even sign
You
that
didn't
one.
sign it and you let it go into.
Right, because I thought I just didn't have any say. I thought my say didn't matter.
So I would just as soon in line 111, leave the word resolution the way it was so that no offense against the mayor, but I don't want it, who knows what if the next mayor wanted to be vindictive and said, I'm gonna veto your council calendar, and then we want to get into a veto override or do something, that just to me opens it up for silly games.
Cassidy, can you share the rationale why it was changed?
We need to look at Utah Code Section 10-3502. This was a request put in by Cindy Quick. She's urgently messaging me.
103502 says the council of each municipality shall by ordinance prescribe the time and place for holding its regular meeting.
So I guess we better do it by ordinance. That'd be my recommendation.
I'd be happy to veto that next
Even
time.
though,
then.
even though, of course, there's only 10 governments in the planet that have the problem we have. So, all right, let's just leave it.
Okay. We also have changed and removed the time of meeting since currently we aren't meeting at 5:30 PM. I guess we have otherwise designated, but we just wanted to clarify that. We've added some more code specificity by our citations. And also there are points, well, first of all, I wanted to get rid of and/PR. I'm not sure what that stands for. But there are some locations across the city where a member of council staff ensures that the notice is posted, so we don't have to drive across the city. There's people that we've entrusted with that, so I thought that we should clarify that it could be a member of council office staff or a designee.
I have a quick question right here on line 129. And anywhere we're taking state law and replacing it with Utah Code section whatever, do we want to specify, or is there a way to specify for all of it that any code section also includes successor provisions? Because next year the state may pass some law that kicks this section 207 down to 207A or whatever, you know what I mean? And it gets kicked around, so sometimes you put and successor provisions so that when state law changes, we don't have to go in and update the code every time state law changes.
We have a definition in here of what code is. If needed, we could probably say yeah.
It needs to be in there somewhere.
I agree with you. I think somewhere in the, maybe even in the first part of the city ordinance, it just says, whenever we refer to state law, it refers to the state law or its successor, and just blanket cover the entire city ordinance. Don't you think we could do that?
Yeah, I think if you put that in a definition and just title it that way, I think it'd be fine.
From my perspective, originally I didn't like the idea of having specific code in here, but it's really nice when you're going back to research something to be able to figure out where you need to go to, especially for a semi-lay person to try and figure out where they need to look. So even if that does become out of date, at least it gives them something. And I don't know that it's an issue if something does change in code and that link no longer becomes valid. We're still saying as in state code, and then everything else can just be for reference purposes.
Yeah, this is something I think that will need discussion once a new city attorney has been hired, just because I want to make sure that they have a preference maybe along with the council, like we can come to something that's easy to maintain and maybe a database or whatever you recommend and they recommend. That's above my pay grade and education, so.
Councilmember Green, then Mayor Burton.
The other question that I have is we've changed it. We call everything Utah Code annotated section 52. Annotated seems to me that used to refer to one specific set of legal books that were published, because I don't even think the Utah Supreme Court uses Utah Code annotated anymore, because it just says Lexis in parentheses, doesn't it? So I'm just wondering if the term Utah Code annotated, if we really need the annotated part, we just can't refer to Utah Code and leave the annotated part out. It's just because like I said, if I remember a long time ago, you used to buy the Utah Code annotated book and the publishers would put all the notes in there. But if you're going to the website or you're doing something else, it's Lexis or whatever. So I'm wondering if the term Utah Code annotated is even right there. And if we just put Utah Code, and it's just a question for the city attorney to, I don't know, maybe you can help us before we finish this off or something.
Line 111 and 112, it says this, it will say, this ordinance shall also set the meeting schedules for other city bodies that hold regular meetings over the course of the year. Do we need to have that sentence in there?
I mean, we're kind of going to include the council a whole, but it's not going to be all of the other bodies. Like, we're not going to include planning commission. I think it's probably misleading to include that.
I think I agree with the mayor. Maybe we strike those couple of lines out.
Yeah, I think I think what they're referring to is like the RDA and the stuff that the council is the boards that it's referring to.
Yeah, but it doesn't say that.
But it doesn't say that. Yep.
Delete.
For simplicity's sake, should we just delete lines 111 or after the word ordinance on line 111 through 112 and just delete it?
I don't see anybody saying no. Okay, so.
The simpler the better.
Okay.
Paul, do you have any comments on the annotated part?
No, I mean, obviously, that is what it's referring to. I mean, I do still buy those volume of books, and they do still make them, and it is still, a citation that is used. It's not used in every single case, but it is still used in some instances. So, I mean, I think that could be something that would just be a preference, going forward on how we want to cite to the state code. Obviously, I don't think it's required, and it could be a preference on how we want to do it.
See, I'm wondering, and what you just talked about is something that maybe what we ought to do is work on in the future, is that maybe what we need to do, here's a project for Ms. Hanson, is what we really need is a city ordinance style guide. How do we write ordinances? I mean, the legislature's probably got one. We ought to have a style guide that says whenever there's a reference to Utah Code, this is what we do. This is the way we always capitalize city or those kind of things. So let's just leave this the way it is for me right now. But maybe one of the things we can look at in the future is a style guide.
But not on a night where you're already wearing 4 different hats.
That's right. Not tonight.
I've been begging for a style guide since I started here, and I'm unfortunately probably a little too familiar with the legislative style guide, but I would love to do that, but maybe not tonight, yes.
My law library access still calls it Utah Code annotated.
Interesting.
This is another situation where we changed it to a member of the council office. And by we, I mean Alan, Cindy, and I thought that that would be a much shorter thing to do instead of council office director and or other council office staff, since in other sections of the code, the council office director is allowed to delegate. So we shortened that up.
Council Chair,
Mayor,
as
please.
she's going past there, 156, line 156, it says C, public notice shall be satisfied by, and then it gives all that under C and then all that under D. My suggestion, if you want to take it, would be eliminate 1, 2, and D, and just write public notice shall be satisfied by Utah Code. Because all that's already in the Utah Code.
That's not a bad idea.
Exact same wording from both Councilmember Green and Vice Chair Bloom. Okay.
Does anybody have a problem dropping lines 156 through 167? And just putting that we provide notice based on Utah, because there's different places, different parts of Utah code that give you different notices, right?
Different things require different methods.
The OPMA requires one notice, but LUDMA requires another notice, and
If it's a
annexation requires another notice, and let's just put, I agree.
Land
Mayor,
use hearing versus potential notice of potential quorum. Yeah. So let it be written, so let it be deleted.
Yeah, strike those lines, Cassidy.
Will do. And then the next section is minutes of the public meeting. A change that I prefer is that you refer to individuals as people who show up, citizens. For our public comment, you're not required to be a citizen, so change to individual.
And actually, I looked that one up in the state code. And the state code does say you have to have the time and the place of the meeting. So again, if we're quoting the state code and we're going to do it according to that, could we eliminate lines 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and just have the first one say we're going to do our public, keep all of our open meetings according to Utah code?
Too far.
I'm actually good with that, because then if state code changes, we don't
One-
have to amend the ordinance.
So for whoever is coming behind, that's lines 173 through 179. Nope.
And the
no,
end of
180.
172.
Correct. On
Yeah.
172, you'll say such
Half-
minutes shall
half of
include that line.
172
we've gone
such
to.
minutes. Yeah, after the citation of code
From
from
such
172
to
through
180.
180.
185, actually, you could actually go all the way to 185. Well, no, yeah, you want to go to 5, you're right, go to 180, and then it goes to the closed meeting, and then the next one's another section of law, so yeah, that works, 180.
Great. Another thing that I thought would be important to add is to talk about when meeting minutes are made available. And this is by Utah State Code. So thought that would be helpful.
Can we go up just a little bit?
Of course.
Stop right there. Rows 189 and 190, talking about being retained permanently and preserved indefinitely. A little bit redundant. Do we need both? Minutes of public meetings of the city council and of the various other committees and boards of the city shall be just preserved indefinitely as a history. And
That's above my pay grade, but I'll check into it for you.
I like that.
It does look redundant.
yeah, we're going to both retain them permanently and then also preserve them indefinitely. Well, let's just keep the preserved indefinitely that we
Well,
already
if we
have.
retain them permanently but not preserve them indefinitely, that means eventually we still have them, they're just unreadable.
If it matters, Ms. Quick's preference is to use retain permanently, and she said deleting the rest works for
Let's go
her.
with that.
Great.
Let's do that, I'm good.
Excellent.
Hi, Cindy.
Ms. Quick, if you'd like to join in, you're welcome to if you want to jump in vocally. If you're happy with the chat, that works too.
She is a panelist, so she is free to do that. We also have this section of rules of conducts. Alan added in Robert's Rules of Order in brief updated third edition, which is what he has been referencing and has been trained in, as far as I understand.
Cool.
And then this is back to qualifications for candidates. It was weird that candidate was capitalized, so I requested that be lowercase, and then you reviewed this earlier within the meeting.
Yeah, that's the one that we shouldn't add "and mayor." If we want to talk about time of the election, we can pull time of election out and make it D and renumber everything. But I think C needs to say qualifications for city council, because if you look up above in B, it specifically says what the qualifications for mayor are.
Real quick, for anybody following behind, we're looking at about row 216. 212 is the B that
Yep.
Councilmember Green was referencing. 215 is the "and mayor" that was referenced.
So
Yeah.
it becomes really weird in construction to say qualifications of mayor in B, and then qualifications for city council in C, and then C1 is election to council seats. C1 is actually how we designate the at-large and the 4 districts, and then it's got the time of the election. If we want to, it would be it would be actually probably cleaner if we just took and just put a section, the mayor shall be elected every 4 years during the election after November 19th or whatever in section B. Or we move time of the election into D and then just re-letter everything else down. Because it would just change D, E, and F. So that'll be up to the council to just say, do we want to put it in B, or do we want to make time of the election just section D?
Okay.
For,
Anybody
Yeah,
got any
as-
preferences?
for the sake of getting things done, I have the all for just as it is now.
I just wanted to point out that if you're gonna take mayor out of the city council qualification section, then on line 213, you wanna take out the references to that under qualifications for mayor as well. Where it references 115, 2C1C, and 2C2.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Subsections. Yes.
Ted.
Good catch. Thank you.
But yeah, it just doesn't make sense to have qualifications or the mayor's qualifications in something specific to city council. So however somebody wants to fix that, let's fix it so that we get it right.
Excellent.
But most of that verbiage is the election timing. Just the very bottom talks about council qualifications, so I think it just needs to be reworked. And I prefer the election separated personally, time of election separated. I think it just makes it easier for someone to find it.
Anybody opposed to separating time of the election? Nobody is in opposition, so let's change that as well.
Great.
Okay.
We also have, well,
I just had a quick question before we moved on. The parts of the code that we were removing, because they just referenced what was already written into the state code, and we just felt like leaving the state code. I don't recall, do we have any hyperlinks in our city code online? Like, I'm just off memory. I don't recall seeing hyperlinks when you have the state code referenced anywhere where you can click on it and then it automatically will pull up the website for the state code. Is that something that we have in there? I don't know if we do, that I don't recall seeing.
I think it could be done where it says section,
Anytime it has the state code, you click on it.
You click
and then
on it, it has a
see
hyperlink.
what the requirements are, because I think, obviously, one of the maybe benefits to listing out what those requirements are is that someone can see them and they don't have to go pull up the code. But if you have a hyperlink there, then I don't think it matters. You just click the hyperlink and then you'll see those. But I don't think we've ever hyperlinked in our code that I can recall.
It's nice. I've always just kind of copied and then Alt-Tab, jump over to the state, paste it into the search, and it pops me up right there.
No.
It'd be nice, yeah.
Boy, it's a great idea if we can, if we can get American Legal Publishing to do the link, that would be a great idea.
My question would be, is that a change order, and how much will they charge?
Yeah, uh-huh.
But anyway, let's carry on, because we've still got a few other items.
Great. We also have a discussion, well, changes in redistricting, which we went through a little while ago. Something that I wondered why it was in here was talking about not splitting any voting precincts. There's nothing in Utah State Code that says we can't split a voting precinct, and they usually make and redo precincts after all of redistricting has been done. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So
we
they go
do our
biggest to
part,
smallest.
then they do
Yep.
their part afterwards, so we're going to kind of probably
You're probably going
jump
to
the ball
unintentionally
anyway.
break them up because they're going to be redrawn. So
have no objection to deleting that.
While we're
That's
looking,
253 to 255.
while looking at redistricting, 256 and 258, how do you define that? Who makes that decision? I think that should just be gone.
I actually
We
like-
kind of made that with Miss Sloan this past year.
Yeah.
She brought us ideas and we moved it a little bit.
I kind of like having that because we've asked the city clerk or the city recorder to bring it to us in the past, and they've specifically pointed to this. Look, this is contiguous, this is compact, and it's substantially equal. They've pointed to this in the past. I kind of like it. I mean, they could make something up and try to gerrymander things, but I really like how politically neutral the city's been in the past, almost at arm's length, having somebody else do it based on very simple, basic criteria that can be easily shared with the public in an understandable fashion to say, while there may be interesting things that happen at the state level, here in the city, we don't do that.
from my experience, I have lots of information about this, but I will spare you and say this is considered the standard. So we have a few more corrections with the Scrivener errors. Dun, dun, dun. There, I thought it was weird. We were personifying our code. Back to April 1st. And I believe that's it. Oh, I lied. Oath of office ceremony will be done in conjunction with the council office and the city recorder.
I have one more deletion I'd like to suggest if you want to look at it.
Please.
And line, starting with line 291, that's not what I want to delete. Sorry, 295 where it says campaign finance report shall include a statement certifying that, and it gives all the things it needs to certify. I think all of that can be taken out, and it just says something like outstanding bills or obligations from previous campaign, taken from line 2, because line 1 is already included, line 3 is already included, line 4 is already included, and so all we're really asking for is line 2 that's not included, so then we just make that one sentence.
Isn't this section already governed by state code, and then we're allowed to be more stringent and require additional, but we can't go less than what the state has? But I don't see a reference to state code here.
There's not, but we already have to, those things are on there, we are already required that are listed previously that we have to report on in the earlier lines. It's just repeating them again. So like, for example, finance report shall identify anonymous donations under line 287 and line 285. Those are already up there. And it's just repeating it again here, saying you have to do a statement saying you did all that, which you already did. And the reason I'm leaving section 2 in there, because that was not included in the upper portion.
So in the lower portion, just say as included in section C.
Well, he
does
just
this
wants
mean?
to know if you paid your bills, is all that.
Well, my question is, would it be easier just, I mean, section C, right? I'm looking at this and I see where you're going. But we have, it says campaign finance report shall include all of these things, right? Are there, if there's anything that's in E that's not in C, let's just move them up to C and delete everything else, because that's what, and just say that's what's in the campaign finance report.
It is, but E is not included in the campaign finance report. That statement saying, so you know, so E is telling you make a separate statement. Maybe we could make that part of the report instead of making a separate statement. Right now it says it's a separate
Yeah,
statement.
I'm just wondering if we can't merge C and E and make it simpler. Because I agree with I know where you're going, Mayor.
Well, and I'm not sure I understand what's on row 296.
297, sorry, did I say 296?
Yeah, 296. All
297.
contributions and expenditures that were not previously reported have been reported.
Right, so that's kind of redundant. So I'm looking at 297. What that says is the way it's written right now, there are no bills or obligations outstanding and underpaid except as set forth in the campaign finance reports. I think that could just be reworded, outstanding bills or obligations from previous campaign, because if it's in the finance report, it's there, but if it's from previous campaign that may not be in the report, then.
So in the interest of time, what I think I'd like to do is, if the council's okay, I think we're pretty much in agreement that this is pretty close to being ready to come back. Perhaps have the mayor, if you can share your thoughts on this last section. If anybody on the council has thoughts on this last section, please share them with the council office.
Okay.
They can incorporate that into a version to be brought to council for finalization. I don't know that we need a separate work session to review that last
So
bit.
here's my question. As we're transitioning to the campaign finance software, I see what number E is it's a certifying statement, right? I'm certifying this. It might be easier if we combine everything and I certify that everything in the campaign report is true.
Right, that's
And,
what,
and I'm wondering if that's not what the software does. So this may be something that we can work with Tangi to fix this section to match the software instead of trying to do something and then it doesn't match the software and then we're all messed up.
or if the software has the flexibility to add it if it's not in there.
All right. Anything else on this one? Are we okay with giving council office staff a direction to make those changes and propose recommendations for that last little bit? Thumbs up, thumbs up. Okay. One more thing for Cassidy. Awesome. Okay. Next item, let's go to the survey. Is that the one you've got ready to go next? Beautiful.
I'm ready. So on Friday, we received the draft survey questions for Y2, and I'll admit I was probably overly optimistic on how little revision I was hoping we would have to do with some of the survey questions we received from Y2, and I probably should have communicated better with them. So I had requested that this item come to this work session so I could get some feedback as I was going through the survey, and obviously administration has an invested interest in this survey as well. As Mr. Lee and I went through the survey, there were a lot of things that we felt didn't represent where the city was standing on those issues, and we didn't want to confuse residents or waste the council's time. So we decided that it would be good for both the council office and for administration to review some of the questions. And so I had a chance to sit down with Mr. Lee and we spent some good time reviewing those Y2 questions. And then I sat with the mayor's cabinet on Tuesday to talk about what administration would like to see and what kind of service questions would be helpful for them. So some things that we've done is simplify the questions to make sure that it's easy for residents to read, remove questions that felt duplicative, so that way we could keep the survey to a length that residents would stay engaged and interested. And we also discussed how departments could improve from results of various metrics within the questions. So what you have at your desk is the questions that administration has said we feel pretty good about these questions. There's a few edits we might make with language, but there are questions that at least administration feels interested in to some extent. And then I think there's a question in there that talks about neighborhoods and what they'd like to see in the city that I thought the council would be interested in terms of like ranking if parks are important, variety of housing and things like that. Also within that draft are questions about how residents like to be contacted and what type of places they find their information, which was important to the council. So what I'm looking for tonight is I want you to take time and review these questions, obviously placing them on your desk tonight. I'm not asking that you're giving me an okay for all of those questions, but I would like to know, are there any policy questions that are within the council's purview that need to be asked on specific policy things that you're thinking about, keeping in mind that you'll get results back.
First thing I want to ask about is we've got this map asking which quadrant they live in.
Yeah.
If we're intentionally trying to distance ourselves from the council districts, 1, 2, 3, 4, could we say northeast, southeast,
Sure.
northwest?
I would love to do that. That was my draft that I made in
And-
10 minutes today. So
Following along with what Chris said, instead of, the question is, do you embed a map in there? Or is it easier just to say, where do you live in the city? North of 7800 South and west of Bangor, south of 7800 South and west of Bangor, east of, and just put where you live instead of even calling it 1, 2, 3, 4.
great. We can do that.
You know what I'm saying? And
Yep.
use Bangor and 78. That's almost the geographic center of the city. It's a little, population-wise, it's a little farther west. But I think if we just did that, it might be just easier. And then you don't have to worry about embedding graphics and all that other nonsense.
Okay.
The other thing I would ask is, I haven't looked through all these, but if we have demographic questions, I want to get a feel for how long have they been in the city and how long do they intend to stay in the city? If there's something along those lines we can ask. Mr. Lee, why are you smiling at that?
We do ask how long you've lived in the city. There was a question that said, how long do you intend to live in the city? I asked that we strike that. I don't want to imply that anyone will ever leave the city. I don't want to put in their minds that, frankly, I just don't like the idea that we're assuming they will move out. So I ask that we strike the question about how long you intend to stay.
See, I kind of like having that question because then it gives us a little bit of an opportunity to find out why. It's similar with employment questions, like how long do you picture yourself still being here? And if the answer is not indefinitely, then, well, why? Is it because you're not close enough to commercial? Is it because we don't have enough senior housing? Is it because we don't have places where you can be close to your kids? What sort of amenities are we missing? Or are you just here for a short term because you came for a temporary construction project or something like that? That's probably a lot more specific than we're going to get, but I'd be curious to see how those who anticipate that they're only going to be a short time answer versus those who have a broader vision. Like if I'm only going to be here for 5 years before I anticipate I'm going to be moving out of state for whatever. I think it might be a potential missed opportunity, and I doubt, at least I'm hopeful people wouldn't decide to move out, or their first inclination would be, hey, I'm seeing the city survey. I've never thought about leaving. You know what? I'm out of here tomorrow. I'd like to get the info. Okay, sorry, others, please.
I just want to suggest, I had gone through the one in the packet and then found out we were getting a new one. And while it would be ideal to have had this maybe a little sooner so that it could help with budget, the mayor's already working on their budget. So I think it's too late for that. So I would ask that we can take these home, review them, and then come back to another work meeting and go through it. Because I personally want to ensure that we feel good about each question on here, and I can't do that tonight without spending way more time than we want to be here for.
Was there a timeline this needed to be back?
Can I respond to that?
Did you go through every question in your meeting?
Yes, we
Yeah,
did.
okay,
Yeah.
that's
No,
all
I mean,
I'm
it's a fair, right, it's a very fair request. Let me tell you about the timeline. It was our desire to do this survey, have it out to residents and completed in December, late November, so that we could have the results in January in time for the budget process, right? Due to a number of factors, we're obviously late now. I want the council to have plenty of time to be comfortable with the survey. I am a little concerned if we don't look at this again and get final feedback from the council until a month from now at the next work session meeting, because then it will be too late to take any of this input and really integrate it into the FY24 budget process. Right now, if we move quickly, I think we can still hopefully have the survey results back soon enough that we use it in the FY24 budget process. But If we don't start the survey until late March, it'll be too late for this current budget process.
We'll talk about meeting schedule here at the end, but based on preliminary feedback already, I don't think there'd be too much opposition if after the regular meeting next week, we had a work session item where we discuss this. Assuming time permits.
Councilwoman Whitelock, I that's my only concern is just if it's 4 weeks from now. I really do want you to have time.
And I
with it.
appreciate that, but again, we should get to review every question just like the administrative side did. It just,
And honestly, I want to make sure that we're approaching this from the right way. I don't want this to be, oh, we did a survey, we went out, we got our constituents, we all feel happy, we did a survey, we get the results and it's a one and done. Well, if we're going to do this and we're going to expend the money that has been budgeted for this, this needs to be an ongoing adventure, an ongoing venture. We need to, the questions that we ask, we need to have, it needs to set a baseline of where we're at and how we improve. Just a couple other thoughts as we're talking about questions. Some of these questions are way too wordy. For example, I'm looking at one on the third page about how to build a stronger community, and it's a sentence with almost 4 lines. It's like, instead, why not just say, these are some things West Jordan City could do to build a stronger community. What do you, please rate that. We don't need the words, in your opinion, which actions would be best. All we need to, let's get down to, I'm going to say this, when you know, newspapers in this country are written on a 5th or 6th grade level so that everybody can read it. The readability, third, whatever it is. This isn't Japan where you have to be a high school graduate to read a newspaper. I want to make sure that we get something that's very readable, that if there's too many words, people are going to go, yeah, let's keep the questions short and simple. What things in the please rate the following list that you think will help West Jordan build a stronger community. Or just rank the following things in order that, and let's just keep the questions simple. You know, please rate your services. Those kind of things.
this is why I think we should have time again.
This is a courtesy for the council, right? I mean, you guys don't need our input on this. You could, the money's budgeted, you have, the mayor, the administration has the authority to survey anybody you want, whenever you want. You don't have to ask us what we think of the questions. I appreciate that you did. At the same time, if we want to put out a survey, we could put out a survey and ask whatever questions we want. For whatever reason you're wanting to do it. The finance department wants some input from residents for budget. Okay. You know, ask them the questions. Whatever questions you think is appropriate, ask them. You've got communications people who work for you guys who know how to make a good survey, send it out, knock yourselves out. I do like the idea though of having like a trending thing where we can say how, you know, what the overall residents of the city, you know, 67% like it. Now it's only 64%. What did we do wrong? Or, you know, have that tracking poll kind of thing going on where we send out a survey of some kind frequently and doing that. I like that too, but I don't know that we need to get all that hands-on-y on this if we
The reason why we want to get hands-on-y on this is because the money that's paying for it is in our budget and Cassidy's the project lead.
Okay, so then it's not necessarily the administration survey, then it's our survey.
It's a city survey.
Okay.
So I want to kind of echo some of what Councilmember Green said about making sure things are nice, concise, and readable. Couple specifics with this. We have some questions like on page 2, To what extent do you agree or disagree? And then we have 5 options: strongly disagree, somewhat disagree, neither. 5 options right there. However, next page, you go to our community services question, and we've changed our rating scale, and now we're going 0 to 100. So we've got 101 options there versus 5. Consistency between the two of them would be nice. And at the top of page 3, I'm looking at all the potential options that are improve, 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 promote, promote, rather than some of the redundancy. If the question was instead of the lower potential ways the city council could work to build a stronger sense of community among its residents, in your opinion, which of the following actions would best help build a stronger sense of community among West Jordan residents? Again, there's some redundancy, but just something simple. To help strengthen the community, where would you like the city to focus efforts? So, social media presence, website, supporting local business, youth activities, things like that. I think I'll stop there. Any other comments or feedback on the survey questions for Cassidy? Cassidy, do you have what you need from us on this one?
I do. One thing I want to comment is I appreciate Councilmember Green and Councilwoman Whitelock's time that they want to take to review the survey. Just something to think about, and this isn't a strong rebuttal, just something I've been thinking about as I've been trying to balance a quality survey and timing, is I don't want to get on an off schedule for residents where we try and ask them survey questions maybe a little bit late for the budget season, but then we're like, okay, next year, this is our year where we're going to get on track so I can have my services and deliver them in time for the mayor to consider. So that's something, I just don't want the residents to have survey fatigue. So this is something to think about as well as we move forward and we ask consistent questions, is finding a balance. And that's something I'm going to have to keep thinking about, but I just wanted to bring to your attention. So one last question. Are there any specific policy questions you want to add that I can have Y2 draft for us?
I haven't read your new survey, so I don't know. But
Okay,
I'll get
I just
that back
wanted to
you.
make sure there wasn't something that you had a burning desire to share, so that I have enough direction. But I will work on this and get it back to you.
Why is Apollo Burger the preferred place to stop after council meeting?
Do you want that as an open-ended question or,
Rank it from 0 to, I don't know, 10,000.
how about 1 million?
Cassidy, I will throw, I don't know the exact wording and I don't know where I want to go, but one of the things that, I didn't like the trade-off question, but there probably needs to be a question on property tax, enterprise funds, something like that. I don't know where
Utility
the
fund
wording.
transfer?
What's that?
Question on utility fund
That's
transfer?
what I'm talking about, enterprise fund transfers and property tax, and I don't know how to ask that, but just put that in the back of your mind that we probably need to talk about property tax increases, those kinds of things, and I don't know exactly where, but anyway.
And at a 3rd grade level.
Easy, I got this. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Anything else on this one? Okay, next we have Council Rules Subcommittee. There are some revisions that the subcommittee was asked to review and then some additional items that were added in here. That was myself, Councilmember Bloom's chair, Councilmember Jacobs vice chair, and then I am the peanut gallery. Would one of the two of you like to introduce us to the council, share what we did?
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
proposed?
I think at this point, most of us have really dived into this over the last few months, which is awesome. And Kelvin, thank you again for your hard work on the past week on this as well. We have gone through this basically line by line, revised certain wording and taken stuff out, added a few things. And I think we're 98% ready to go on this. So I think at this point we can dive in.
So, let's see.
Or not, because we took too much time.
Session expired. I will move motion fails. I know it was semi-joking, but behind every good joke, there's a kernel of truth, and that had way more than truth than it should.
Let's, you know what, should we call it good and move this to another night where we've got some time?
I don't think this will take long. It's mostly, if everybody's already read this, I know the committee went through this in detail. Councilmember Green spent significant time going through this as well. So council members Whitelock, Pack, and Worthen are the only three who haven't had at least direct contact with me on this one. But if you've already read it and don't have any significant issues, and Councilmember Pack, yeah, for the council rules. So if there's nothing significant, I guess we could probably skip the overview and just ask council, are you okay with this being brought back on a regular agenda for
Kelvin, was
formalized
there a
approval?
code discrepancy that you had mentioned?
Yeah, I think we resolved that, didn't we, Chris?
Yeah.
Okay, I just
Yeah.
wanted, I know you had brought that up and I
Yeah,
wanted to
there
make
was
sure we took.
There was an issue based on electronic meetings and for people and,
Attending electronically versus an electronic meeting.
yeah, we cleaned when Chris and I went through it, we cleaned that up and I think we actually took out that section.
We did kind of what the mayor had suggested and deleted a couple paragraphs and instead just referenced state code and called it good.
Then I'm okay if no one has any issues and they've read through it, then we can take it to a meeting.
Yeah, sounds like everybody is in favor with that, so we'll put it on a upcoming council agenda for adoption. Last item, I want to circle back to council meeting structure a little bit. First thing, before I forget to ask this question, one of the things that's driving me crazy is trying to remember, wait, tonight do we start at 5:30 or do we start at 6? Do we want to keep the staggered start times or do we want consistency regardless of what meeting it is?
Consistency, please.
Second.
Yeah, consistency would be good.
Everything start at 6?
Second.
I'm fine either
I'm
way.
good either way. I mean,
That's-
earlier means earlier out, but
We do have a couple meetings that have already been noticed, so I will suggest we proceed with the times that have been kind of noticed through the.
Those will be 6 o'clock meetings. right,
Corbin, you
if
look
they've
worried. You have a
noticed.
concern looking, okay.
So, yeah, see, I
nice
don't want to go to 5, I don't want to start at 5:30 because that puts citizen comments and everything at 5:30. So 6 o'clock to me makes more sense for the citizens.
Yeah, but the trade-off is when you have staff who are coming, they're leaving their regular day job and then they've got to figure out, well, what do I do with this time? And it puts them a little bit later going home.
Get dinner.
So it's
Apollo
tricky.
Burger.
It used to be that we would start city council at 5:30 and we'd start with the closed session when necessary. And then start the regular 6:30, but
So here's a thought, because we can do this on the agenda. Start the meeting at 5:30, but there are specific agenda items that are always time certain. Sandy does that they'll start a meeting at 5:30, but at 6 o'clock, if there's citizen recognition or public comments, you just stop what you're doing and then you go to citizen comments at 6 o'clock or at 6:15 and we just have that as always a time certain item on the agenda. Then we start at 5:30, but we're taking into account the residents trying to get here.
I think we had tried something like that before, but it ended up being a bit clunky having to leave things mid-item. Councilmember Jacob, do you remember that?
Vaguely, but I don't remember any specifics. But yeah, I just prefer the 6 o'clock just because it gives people more time to get here. What if the 5:30 item's the one they wanted to hear? And yeah, they get comments at 6, but they miss the first half hour. It gives people more time to get here. At the end of the day, we don't serve the staff, we serve the residents. So,
That's a really good comment.
in as much as some staff are residents, however, you get the best of both worlds.
It seems like the majority would prefer that we be consistent and we be at 6 p.m. Is that correct? Or at least not objectionable to it?
Yeah, I like consistency, and I think Councilmember Jacob hit the nail on the head. It's the residents the citizens we should consider.
Okay. Next question. When we're looking to wrap things up and trying to figure out how much we could fit into one meeting, It used to be written into council rules that we would adjourn the meeting at 9 p.m. With Mayor Johnson, we had almost every single night motion to suspend the rules to allow the meeting to continue beyond 9 p.m. So after a while, it was decided to just strike that from the rules, which is why it's not in there now. Still, as a general rule of thumb, would you like 9 p.m. to be the target termination time unless there's something significant that needs, time sensitive, that needs to go beyond, and try to shoot for 9 p.m. or prior?
Is that inclusive of closed sessions? I mean, everything on the agenda? Or, I'm fine. I agree there's value in consistency, while also, you know, if we're saying we need more time, you know, now we're starting at 6 instead of 5:30, so it's, you know, which one do we want? And then if we're having a hard, fast end time.
Not
and we're
hard,
only saying
fast,
3
but
hours.
hard targeted.
Okay. So if that's 6 to 9, 3 times a week, that's 9 hours. Whereas, you know, if we did,
I would propose we just keep it at no more than 3 times per month rather than 3 per week.
Times a week.
sorry, thank you, 3 times per
The
month.
3 meetings a month has already been decided. We can't revisit that.
Right,
we
just,
can.
just saying that if what we're shooting for then is 9 hours, I'm just mentioning, you know, what's the difference of 2 nights at 4.5 hours each, then 3 nights at 3 hours, just to think about for the future. So, thank you.
Noted. The other, Councilmember Jacob.
I just think you're gonna end up in the same bucket we ended up with when we did this before. It's a cute idea, and it's nice, but we'll just, you know, when it gets to 9 o'clock, oh, wait, somebody's gotta make a motion. Oh, make a motion to suspend the rules. Oh, okay.
It's
yeah,
not gonna
okay.
be in the rules. It's just gonna be,
As we're planning the agenda and trying to figure out, okay, it looks like the meeting, I'm guessing it'll go from 6 o'clock till maybe 7:30, 8 o'clock. So
So
we've got
adding-
hour
so
and a
add
half.
something.
Are there work session items that we can bring on?
As a leadership kind of prerogative.
An RDA issue.
Yeah,
Is,
yeah.
yeah, is there an RDA? Are there potential
I
closed
think it's
session
cute, but I
items?
think you're gonna end up with what you're gonna end up with regardless.
Yeah. We've learned from engineering induced demand when it comes to streets. You make the street wider, the traffic will come with the
Like I
meeting.
said, it's a gaseous environment. It fills the space allotted.
But just so you know mentally where I am right now, I'm looking at all of the items that are on future agendas, thinking this is going to take a lot with what's already been submitted to the council. So do we overstack what we have on work session nights and stay till 11 o'clock? And on regular council meeting nights, we only go till 7:15? Or do we kind of spread it out? So if I know generally speaking, the council is wanting to not stay beyond 9 o'clock, I'll use that as a general rule. Next to that, what do you want to see? Do you want to see, I mean, Zach, you mentioned earlier that you like to see the work session items separate. If we don't have many work session items, would you rather see, I mean, Councilmember Pack has suggested rather see everything on the one night with regular council meeting. Maybe we have work session items there. If we don't have many work session items, would you rather see them
I
separate?
personally don't see that big of a difference between a business session and a work session. They all kind of blend together. In this environment, especially when we're all sitting up here and we're all taking turns and we're calling on people and yada yada, it's only slightly less structured in this environment than it is last week. Not seeing a huge difference. To me, it's just 3 meetings and they're 3 meetings. I'm not, I don't know, I'm not seeing the great time savings or cost savings or anything. I think we're asking staff to stay late an extra time per month. They wouldn't necessarily have to. And not very many staff, but some staff. And I don't think we'll ever get to a point where we can say staff doesn't need to attend this meeting, because if we're debating something, a question will arise and we're gonna want to ask. And if they're not here, we can't. And say, sorry, you should have asked that last time. Well, I didn't have the question last time. It just came up in the debate, in the dialogue. So, I don't see the virtues of the 3 meetings a month. That's why I would have been a no had I been here, and it still would have passed 4-3, but maybe I would have been persuasive and gotten somebody to flip. Who knows?
All right. I think that gives me most of what Councilmember Pack, sorry, I didn't see that light.
Oh, thank you. So is it fair to say, a correct assumption, that where we seem to be lacking adequate time is the work session materials, the work session items, not necessarily the council meeting agenda items, right? Because we've accomplished so much more this year, having more time in the work sessions. Just saying, we've got 2 city council meetings a month and 1 work session. So I could see perhaps the necessity to go longer on the work session night, or if we do want to limit it to 3 hours, we very well might not have 3 hours of material for a city council meeting. So yes, let's blend it and have, we've got some of these unfinished business items or other discussions that we need to have. I'm totally fine staying past 3 hours. I stay till 10 or 11. I know some people want shorter nights and multiple days, and I just happen to be a longer night, fewer days person. I'm happy to work with anyone and everyone in either way. But is that a correct assumption that the problem we're running into is we need more time for work session items, but we only have 1 of those meetings a month, whereas we have 2 meetings of city council?
So the question came from Vice Chair Bloom and myself from a little different perspective. Rather than what problem are we trying to fix, the council already spoke and said, here's what our schedule is going to be for the next year. So Councilmember Bloom and I are looking at this, trying to figure out what does the council want to see as we go through these meetings. We're looking at this from a perspective of that it's really hard to win. I mean, the first meeting that we had that was ours, we had the first meeting where the agenda wasn't inherited, where we set that, we touched on a few nerves because we tried to add some things in there. The second meeting we touched on a few nerves because we didn't. So we're trying to execute what we only see as a partial vision. So we're just trying to get feedback as to what people would like to see, not so much the mechanics, because that part's already been decided. The 3 meetings, here's what our schedule is for the year. We're just trying to decide, like next week, do we want to have the regular council meeting and then maybe we put a work session at the end to address clarification or additional discussion on some of these survey questions. That's something where if we have a relatively short council meeting, hopefully we can do that in 15, 20 minutes, it would seem appropriate, or would the council not have that appetite? It seemed like the council would have the appetite to do something like that. So that's what I'm trying to answer. How can we create an agenda that ruffles the fewest feathers, helps us be as productive as possible, and gives the most opportunity for citizens? The other thing that we're trying to do, again, not saying should we do the 3 meetings or should we stick with 2, but how can we see if we can use that to expedite the process as well, being able to have quick turnaround, like initial discussion and initial presentation of certain items tonight, where we can potentially bring it back even next week. That's something we've not had in the past. So I see a couple other lights.
So I trust that you as leadership will put together a good agenda. I'm happy to be here as late as it takes. My desire is that we get the work of the city done, and done in the best possible manner, not the quickest way. So for me, that's what I want when you're setting up our agenda. I want you to look at it and allot the time that we need. If we need to be here till 10 or 11, I'll be here till 10 or 11. I just want us to do a good job at what we do and not be constrained by meetings or time.
See, and I think what we're talking about with this survey, where it's more time sensitive, and next week's meeting seems to be maybe a little bit shorter, and we have some time after the meeting. That's the perfect time to address the anomaly, the time sensitive issue that we've got to face. And I don't want to have everything be a time sensitive issue, but I think that it gives us it gives us a little bit of balance. I think what we saw tonight is that, for example, we'll use the DAI project. We saw that there was some feedback that they're going to take back, and they're going to work on the project, and they're going to do some things to help meet the council's intent. If you think back to Welby West, if we would have done that initially and provided the feedback, we would have saved how many meetings that we had, listening to it, postponing it, listening to it, postponing it, listening to it, postponing, multiple public hearings. We would have come up with a better project. We would have come up with a better project sooner instead of the way it got drug out. So I think tonight we saw what will be the benefits of having the things come before the council sooner. And Kayleen's right. We're here to do the people's business, and we're here to get things done. And, you know, we would have never got, I mean, we've been in this meeting now 3 hours and 15 minutes. How many meetings would that be when we start the work session at 5:30 and we go till 6:45? That's 3 meetings. We'd have never got through all of this stuff. We got through it. We had good discussion. So I think that this has been appropriate. If there are things that need to go on the meeting, that's the business meeting, like the surveys, like the RDAs, that we still have a closed session item that was agendized and postponed, and we still haven't got to it after 5 months. If there are those kind of things, then we need to do those to accomplish what we need.
And this is a small thing, but on the request for council action, this will help us as we're planning the timing too, is please be accurate on how much time you think it's gonna take, so we're not guessing as well. I know we can usually figure it out in the leadership meeting, but it would be really good idea to have a little more insight of how much dialogue that you think is gonna take on that, just a
And then
small thing.
multiply by 3.
Yeah. But no, just those little things that help us timing with the meetings as well.
Councilmember Pack.
Right, so it seems, correct me if I'm wrong, we can place work session items on city council nights, but it's a lot more challenging to do it vice versa, because we can't really vote on ordinances, resolutions. And so if that's what we're getting at, right, if we just kind of designate a certain block of time, because I think what might have precipitated some of the questioning was that I believe, if memory serves correctly, one of our first meetings ended like it was only like an hour long. And so that, I think that's probably what did it. And so it's like, well, wait, I thought we had so much we needed to discuss. And so then if we have items that can be placed on the discussion agenda where we're not taking official votes, then sure, it's nice to say, hey, we're done, cool, go home early. But then that's really not meeting the intent of having 3 meetings a month. So yeah, let's place the discussion work session items on city council night to fill up some time.
And my thought right now is that for the regular council meeting, we'll have the regular council meeting start first, because that's when we have all of our public hearings noticed and citizen comment. And then once those regular items are done, I would go back to having a work session, but it would be after, because it's a lot more flexible on timing. Like we saw tonight, those who were here for land use items were able to leave, so it's minimal staff that are still here. So as we're talking amongst ourselves, it doesn't have as big of an impact on folks. So that's kind of what I'm thinking for next week's meeting. We'll have the regular council meeting and then have a committee of the whole meeting which immediately follows. Although that could be subject to change if there's a closed session or other items, but in the back of my mind, that's kind of where I'm thinking I'd like to go, to try and be as efficient as possible. And for your benefit, I'm not hoping to stay till 9 o'clock every night. If we were to have a 4-hour meeting, stay from 5:30 to 9:30 on 2 Wednesdays a month, there's 9 hours. I mean, yeah, 3 hours, break it apart between 3 meetings. I think once we start having a little more consistency with this 3 meeting schedule, I wouldn't be surprised if we could regularly see us wrapping up at 8:30. So
I will just add, part of the reason that first meeting was short is the first of the year lull. A lot of the developers weren't putting stuff through, and there weren't a lot of applications, and so what we saw was a lull because of the holidays, and we're gonna catch back up pretty quick from what I see.
all right, well, I think that we have enough to move forward, and I feel like that horse has been sufficiently beaten, so I would look for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Green, second by Vice Chair Bloom. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Chair rules motion passes, and we stand adjourned. Thank you.